Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 396. It's not that film distributors want to screw over filmmakers. It just happens organically. Jeff Deverett.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to a very special episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble and quarantined host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. Before we get started, guys, I set up a special link to help people affected by the coronavirus, and you can donate to Feed America. There is a lot of people in need out there, and Feed America is a great organization, and they're helping millions of people on a daily basis, and they also need your help. If you want to donate even $5, $10, it goes a long way. Head over to indiefilmhustle.com/help. Guys, I can't tell you how excited I am to bring you this insane episode. It is by far one of my most favorite episodes I've ever done on the show, and I feel that your minds are going to explode when you hear it. Now, to go along with today's episode on film distribution, I have decided to launch the beta version of my new course, Film Distribution Confidential, what predatory film distributors do not want you to know about. Now, when I decided to make this course, I wanted to make sure it was the most comprehensive film distribution course online, as current as humanly possible. And the way I'm going to do that is to offer a beta version to the first 100 tribe members who sign up. I'm only going to allow 100 people in. It's going to be first come, first serve. And you guys are going to help me design and build this course for filmmakers around the world. You'll be the first ones to see new lessons as I create them. You will have access to me during the creation of the course, and you'll be able to give feedback on the lessons and even request new lessons that I might have not even thought about. This is going to be an amazing, amazing journey, and I can't wait to have the tribe inside the course helping me build the best distribution course on the planet. Now, if you want to sign up, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/let me in. That's indiefilmhustle.com/let me in. Now, let's get to the meat of this episode, guys. Today's guest is Jeff Deverett. And Jeff is an ex-distributor who has turned into a filmmaker. Jeff had been in the distribution side of the business for almost 20 years and has been making films as a filmmaker for the past 15 years. He has directed 7 feature films, 3 of which are on Netflix currently. He self-distributes all his films, and only after he switched from the distribution side to the filmmaker side did he realize what the hell was going on and how filmmakers have everything stacked against them when walking into a negotiations for a film distribution deal. Now, Jeff reached out to me after reading my book, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, and really wanted to just talk about the book and the concepts in the book, and congratulated me on the distribution chapter in that book because it was really right on. So as I was talking to Jeff, I found that he was obviously an ex-distributor, and I asked him, would you be interested in coming on the show and kind of talking about distribution and how distributors do those kind of tricks that they do to kind of screw over filmmakers in many ways. And he said, absolutely. I know where the bodies are buried. I'll be more than happy to share everything. And when I finally recorded this episode, Jeff did not disappoint. He laid out so many golden nuggets on the mindset of a distributor, on how the industry has just been built this way, how the deals are structured, how you follow the money, how you can negotiate certain aspects, what kind of clauses you might need to protect yourself, when to walk away from a distribution deal, when to, maybe not get everything you want, but move forward with a distribution deal. It was just mind-blowing. It was just an insane conversation. And we also talk about how he's using the Filmtrepreneur method and has been using the Filmtrepreneur method for years in regards to how he's using niche filmmaking and how he's been able to really build a business around his filmmaking passion. This is an epic conversation. It lasts over 2 hours long, so I need you to strap in, get ready to take notes, and prepare yourselves to have your mind blown. Without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Jeff Deverett. I'd like to welcome to the show Jeff Deverett, man. How are you, my friend?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it. You and I have been talking for a couple weeks now, going back and forth on some stuff. And the idea was like, I think it was you that said, hey, would you like me to come on your show to talk about all things distribution? Because I know where if I may quote, I know where the bodies are buried. So I was like, well, yes, sir. If do you want us to blur out your face? You're like, no, I'm fine. So before we get into it, tell the audience, how'd you get into the business?
Okay. So you're going to hear from my accent that I'm formerly from Canada. Mm-hmm. I now live in San Diego, California, which beautiful San Diego. But I lived in Toronto, Canada for most of my life. And my wife and I decided, because we want to make a lifestyle change, mostly because of the winters in Canada. As you and I agree, Toronto's a great city, and it's a great film city, by the way, too. Mm-hmm. But it is nasty in the winter, and she's American, so we were able to make that change. So that's why we ended up in the United States, and I'm now a citizen, very proud, and actually in a couple of days of July 4th, I take that very seriously. So I celebrate July 4th. Okay, anyways, how did I get in the business? So I got what you call the bug, the virus, for lack of it. I got that virus, which is the filmmaking virus, at about 16 years old, I recall. Mm-hmm. I don't know why I got it. I just got the virus that I needed to be a filmmaker. Mm-hmm. And so when I was going to college in 18 as in Canada, my dad said, so what do you think you want to do? And I said, I want to be a filmmaker. He said, for really? And I go, yeah, I think I do. Yeah. He goes, do you want to be a producer or director? And I said, I don't know. What's the difference? He said, no, he didn't even know. This was right. A crazy conversation, but this is what literally went on. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, if you want to be a producer, I think you should either go to law school or business school. You should either get an MBA or a law degree, because I think there's going to be a lot of business involved. But if you want to be a filmmaker, like a director, go to film school, because, it's all artistic. So I said, I think I want to be a producer. And anyways, I went and got an undergrad degree, a business degree in economics and finance. And then I went to law school and got a law degree. And then I went right into in Canada, you have to practice law for 1 year, to do it sort of an apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. And then right after that, I applied only film companies. I wanted to be in their legal department. Mm-hmm. So, and I ended up at first at a small indie company, but then at a big sort of quasi studio, as big as they are in Canada, a public mm-hmm. company, a media company. So when I was being hired into that job, I thought I was being interviewed for the legal department, but they ended up putting me in distribution, and I went into sales. And I said, this is unusual. They said, well, you have the right personality for sales. So, and we like your background, and we know you can talk business and negotiate contracts. So we're going to put you into the sales department. And I had no clue. I mean, I literally thought I was going into the legal department, into business affairs. So I said, yeah, this is fun because I got to go to all the markets. You know, I got to literally travel the world, go to all the markets. So my job was to basically acquire indie films and programming TV, both TV and movies, and to set it up for distribution. Ultimately, I phased into the selling side as opposed to the acquisition side. And then I started running the domestic sales operations internally in the studio. And then we branched out into lots of different things. As you say, you know, you got to be like your Filmtrepreneur book, which I read, by the way, and enjoyed.
Thank you.
So we branched out into lots and lots of different merchandise, and it wasn't just about the programming. It became a full business in terms of how we could monetize lots of other things. That's
curious. What other products or what other things what other revenue streams were coming in from the films?
Well, I don't know if you totally reviewed my bio that I sent you. But
I do remember. Yes. Yes. Please tell the audience. There was this one small IP that you guys picked up.
One small little item, and I hopefully we're talking about the same thing because we didn't talk about it. But So my biggest acquisition by far for the Canadian market was this purple dinosaur called Barney.
Barney, yep.
Yeah. So for those of you who remember, Barney, you know, was gigantic, children's property. And for those of you who are smiling because your kids were probably hooked on it. Anyways, I met this woman named Cheryl Leach at one of the conferences in Las Vegas. At that time, Barney, she had just made 3 videos. Barney was actually blue. It wasn't purple. It was a different voice. It was a different thing. And I had 2 kids at the time, and I was very interested in young, programming for kids. And I meet this school teacher, Cheryl Leach, and she tells me about this property and that she's a school teacher and she knows what kids resonates with them. And I brought it back to, and I said, guys, we should acquire this. I don't know why. There's something about it. This woman kind of she's connected. She's hooked into what the audience really wants. So we acquired it. And sure enough, Barney, like within a year, got onto PBS and became like what it was. She changed the color, and it grew and grew and grew, and it became this fantastic property. Anyways, originally we I just did the rights for, basically the programming, which was television and home video at the time. And home video was monstrous. It was still VHS at the time. And then we were transitioned into DVD. And over the first couple of years, we developed a really good relationship. And she said, we're doing all this other stuff. Like we're doing all these licensed brands like plush dolls and books, publishing, music, toiletries, clothing. And, there's a lot of opportunity for that in Canada because, a lot of it's not licensed. And I said, okay, where do I sign up? And we got everything. We became the music publisher, the book publisher. It was just the biggest was the
money, just printing money.
Plush dolls was the biggest. And then we realized that the show is just a TV commercial really to get people interested, to sell merchandise. And we did concerts and we did so much stuff. And first of all, it was a lot of fun. Secondly, I learned so much about merchandising and ancillary rights, that type of thing. There was tons and tons of piracy dealt with.
Of course.
Everything was being pirated at that time. You'd make a plush doll. A week later, some rip-off doll would appear in Walmart from some other distributor. And it spent a lot of time dealing with that. But it was monstrous. Now, the only thing is I didn't own that company. I was working for a public company. They were great guys and I enjoyed it, but they made a ton of money. And the people back then when we started, it was called the Lions Group, became Lyric Studios, and then ultimately Hit Entertainment bought it. And great property. And,
so the Barney lady, Cheryl, she actually made money with this deal.
Oh, she made tons of money.
So, okay. And we're going to get into why that deal made money and a lot of others didn't. But you did this during the 90s, if I'm not mistaken, right? 90s, early 2000s?
Yep, that was mid 90s mid 90s. 96 I licensed property. Yep.
Okay. So cuz I remember when I was still like 93, I was working 92, I think 92 and 93 I was still working at a video store, and Barney just so much Barney.
Yeah, it might have been 95 maybe. I started there in 94. Yeah, and it was early on. So
yeah,
I can't remember.
It was around there, but I remember we had plush dolls, and like you couldn't keep anything Barney in. It was insane. So can you tell the audience a little bit about what it was like in the 90s with distribution, in the sense that, VHS was obviously king. Basically, you could almost put almost anything out on VHS and you would make money with it. Is that a fair statement?
Okay, well, let's just finish the Barney thing first.
Okay, go ahead.
Barney was that. I wouldn't even call that independent filmmaking. It started off as a TV show, but it became an entire, licensing and merchandising business. That's what that is. So it's not really independent filmmaking. Mm-hmm. So let's switch gears and I'll tell you about the 90s. So I started off primarily in television, because video was just starting. And, you can figure out my age if you want. I'll tell you, I'm 59 years old, mm-hmm. and I started right out of law school at 26. So I've been doing it for a few years. And so VHS had just launched, and basically, we were all like trying to figure out, like, how do we make money with this? Because some of the, the big the big video chains had launched, like Blockbuster and stuff like that. And so we originally were selling. There was no sell-through. It was just rental. So we were selling VHS tapes for about $110.
Correct.
We were selling it to video stores. They would do the rentals, and that's how it went out. And then I remember the first movie that they attempted to sell
E.T.
was the first one I think was Top Gun. It might have been. I thought it was Top Gun.
It might have been an Indiana Jones, or it might have been a Top Gun. It was one of those. Yeah, it was one of those. But I remember E.T. was the thing that blew it off. Yeah, blew it out of the water.
Yeah. So, and the studios were going to take a chance with that, because that was kind of breaking the mold, going and selling directly to consumers through like stores like Walmart as opposed to Blockbuster. And back then it was $30, to buy a VHS tape. It wasn't, $10 to $12. So that was a whole new business model. We were all thinking, oh no, there's no way anybody's going to buy that, because they can rent it for, $3.99 or $4.99 in a Blockbuster store. And sure enough, took probably a year to develop that market, and that became the business. Now the rental business was still pretty strong, but the sell-through business became everything. And then of course DVDs came along, so we just changing format, but the sales process was all still the same. And those were, to me, cool. I'm going to call them the glory years.
The money was flowing. You mean money was flowing like crazy?
Well, people were enjoying it. Like, people wanted to own. You got like a piece of merchandise. You got like a nice box. You got an item. And you had people were collecting, like libraries were developing. So, and you could watch it over and over again. We had special features was a gigantic element to put onto the, all the DVDs. But you said something earlier. You said you could sell anything. Yeah, the truth was you pretty well could sell anything as long as you had a good box.
Listen, I had in my film, because I know this, because when I was working in the video store in the late 80s, early 90s, the stuff that would come in, there was the Slimerama Bowl-orama, there was Assault of the Killer Bimbos, which was literally 2-3 girls flying like that, like popping bubble gum. The Exterminator, which is obviously a ripoff of the Terminator. And then anything that Roger Corman put out. Like, it was insane. You could literally put out, and I remember the guy driving up to the front of our mom and pop. It wasn't my shop, but the mom and pop shop that I worked at. He would drive up with a van. It was like so seedy. He would open up the back of the van and he would have just VHSs lined on the walls. Like, you could walk into the van and pick out titles to buy. And they were like they weren't like the studio stuff. It was all the indie stuff. Yeah. And we would buy a bunch, like, oh, that cover looks good. Right. Let's put it on the shelf. And that's what we'd rent. And it was a gold rush. It was a gold rush. And DVD. And I think that's I think Hollywood basically leaned on that DVD market so much, and VHS market. It was their entire business model.
Yeah, it became the primary revenue source for sure for many, many years, and for good reason. People had fun. Like it was an event to go to a Blockbuster store. You go there and you'd walk around and look at all the different titles, and you never heard of any of this stuff, like you said, but it was fun to do it. I enjoyed doing that.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a different time. It was a different time. So, all right. So you're now in distribution, and you obviously are handing out deals left and right, and you're talking to independent filmmakers, you're talking to content creators. And when you were in the sales side of things, when we spoke earlier, you were like, well, Alex, I didn't knowingly try to screw over filmmakers. That was just the way the system is kind of set up. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I mean, here I am, I'm 26. I get hired by a big, large media company to go into their entertainment department. And, what do I know? I'm fresh out of law school and new to the whole industry and everything like that. And they said, here's how it works. I'm not taking, I'm not trying to make excuses or anything, but you got to learn, right? Here's how it works. Here's how the distribution business works. Here's how the deals are done. And I was a sponge. I just absorbed it all. And I went with the flow because I was working for them. And this is what you do. And this is how, you're learning. Right.
And by the way, and to your defense, that's the system back then in the 80s and the 90s. Like that, there was no options, and everybody did business this way. There was no self-distribution
there was no
such thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is how it was done. Yeah. So I said, okay, I can do this. I mean, I'm learning and trying my best and being diligent and going with the flow and everything like that. So it wasn't literally until 2004 when I decided to make my first feature film that I really understood what was going on. So I'm not an evil guy. I didn't want to screw anybody or give bad deals or anything like that. But that was the business. And then when I realized that I'm going to be on the other side of this equation,
right,
all of a sudden the light turned on and said, hey, wait a second. This kind of doesn't make sense. And for all the people, who are maybe listening who did a deal with me in the early years, I'm sorry if I gave you a bad deal.
This episode's your penance.
I didn't know any better. Honest to God, I didn't.
No. And look, and to be fair, to you, Jeff, like again, in that time period, that's all there was. There was no other options. And everybody was given the same deals, which were horrible deals many times and if you didn't like it, you just go don't take it and go somewhere else. But the other person they'll give you the same deal. So there weren't a lot of options for filmmakers, but there were obviously some filmmakers were making money. Obviously somebody was making money somewhere because it's not all one and done. So was it because they structured deals differently? Maybe they had, how does that work?
That's exactly it, Alex. Here's the thing. The distributors aren't evil. They're just business people. They're business people in a business that's designed to be skewed in their favor. That's all. That's all it is. But they're not bad people. Some of them are bad people, but for the most part, they're not bad people.
Right.
The deals are bad. That's the problem. Think about a film is a major thing in somebody's life, in a filmmaker's life. It's as big as I shouldn't compare it to this, but it's almost as big as having a child.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. You put your heart and soul into this. You put all your financial wherewithal into it. You spend months and years. I mean, it's a big, big deal. And, it can change your life, or you could go broke. You could make do well. I mean, it's a big, big deal to make a movie. All right. So if you it's a major asset also. Now think about the biggest asset in most people's lives is if they buy a home. Now think about this, okay? I was thinking about our discussion we're going to have today, and I want to compare it to home buying. Like when you buy your first home, you're a little naive, you're a little green around the ears and everything like that, but you're still smart enough to know that they put a list price up and you can negotiate it. You don't necessarily have to pay the list price. They say, this is what we're asking, but make us an offer. And so it's negotiable, right? Now, when you go to – that's buying. On the selling side, when you go to sell your house, the agent says, okay, I want a 6% commission. And you say, well, wait a second. Why can't we do it at a 4% commission? It's fair game to ask those questions because there's a lot of money at stake. And this is your major asset in your life. And, like you get one shot to do it. And hey, like you get a low ball offer, you say, thanks a lot, but I want to, and you write it back at a higher price. This is regular standard operating procedure in real estate for a major asset like a house. Mm-hmm. Why isn't that the case with indie films? Why does a filmmaker basically walk into a distributor and they put a deal in front of them and they kind of think, oh, this is what I have to live with? And and here's the reason. Is because they don't know any better. They don't know that they can actually negotiate it. They don't know that they can push it. They sort of don't know the right questions to ask and know where the give and take points are. And, it doesn't hurt to ask. I'm not saying you're necessarily going to get it, but the reason the deals are primarily bad in the film business is because one party to the deal doesn't know as much as the other party. I.e., the filmmaker just does not come armed with enough knowledge and experience as the distributor does. So they're always going to, I'm not going to use the word bully, but they're going to negotiate a better deal for themselves because the other party doesn't really know how to negotiate that deal. And that's why a lot of indie filmmakers get screwed. Not because, look at a distributor, they're in business to make money. They're business people, right? And if they can do a better deal for themselves, then, fair is fair. That's their business. Now, they know darn well that the other guy on the other side of the table is really not suited to negotiate that deal. And by the way, a lot of the lawyers that indie filmmakers bring in, they also don't know what they're doing. I've seen so many lawyers screw this up because, they're a real estate lawyer or they're a family law lawyer or something like that. They're not specialists in this area. So it's not like something you talk about in your book and on some of your podcasts, you talk about like the 15-year term. Like that is ludicrous. 15-year terms. But if you're a distributor, hey, why not ask for 25-year terms? Like, hey, the longer you can get your distributor, take what you can get, right? But, on the filmmaker side of the opinion, like it's like giving a 15-year term without, outs like performance, guarantees and stuff like that. But for a lawyer to not question that, I mean, like
it's insanity.
The reason they wouldn't is because they don't know. They think, okay, maybe these guys have been in business a long time. They're a big, legitimate company. Maybe that's the standard procedure.
So I want to stop you there for a second. So the big distributor. Okay. So and again, we're not talking Warner Brothers, Universal. We're not talking the majors. We're not talking about studios. We're not talking studios. That's a different conversation.
Correct.
Independent companies. There are a handful out there who have a lot of perceived value based on their name, that they're big, that they're kind of everywhere, that they're releasing movies all the time. And they've positioned themselves in the filmmaking space, in the independent filmmaking space, as a player in as far as getting films out there. And there's this kind of almost honor associated with being a part of their library to say, hey, I got released by these guys. I'm not going to get paid, but I could say that I got released by these guys. And like, what other business does that make sense?
Okay, hold on. Let me defend them for a second. Let me defend them. First of all, they know what they're doing. I mean, most distributors, they're in the business. They know how to sell. They know they know how to do the deals in the international marketplace. That's what they do day in, day out. So, and a lot of them are good at doing it, right? The problem is the deal. It's not necessarily, okay, there are some times when a distributor will take on your movie and not do anything with it, but that's not there. But they're not interested in that. They don't want to waste their own time and money. They generally want to take on stuff that they believe they can do stuff with, which we'll get into in a second, okay? Yeah. But the problem is the deal. Just the deal skewed more in their favor. But like if the distributor generally wants to do a good job because the better the job they do, the more money they make. Like the more revenue they can generate, because they're generally working on a percentage, the more money they can make. So they're not in the business to screw filmmakers. That just happens organically because No, because the deals are set up the wrong way. I will go.
Hold on a second. Can we just stop there for a second? We have to rewind that. I need to focus on this a little bit. It's not that distributors screw. I'm going to put this on a T-shirt.
Not that they want to. They don't want.
It's not that film distributors want to screw filmmakers. It just happens organically. That should be a T-shirt. I should put it in my store and sell it. That is brilliant.
Welcome to use it. Welcome to use it.
Can you imagine walking AFM with that shirt on?
No, but everybody would say, "Where can I get one of those?"
Nowadays, absolutely.
Okay, but the reason is because the filmmaker has not done a good deal for themselves. That's the reason. It's not that the distributor did their job; they did a good deal for themselves. The filmmaker just didn't know better.
So you were saying that they are in the business to make money, and there's no question. And they are in the business to acquire films that can generate them revenue. Yes. No question. But a lot of time, it's, there's certain distributors out there that release 40, 50, 60 movies a month. They're obviously not spending marketing money on all those films. They're obviously not they don't have the manpower to focus their energy on per film situations. Like there's look, A24, which is, basically the Sundance of independent distribution. Like they pick 11, 12 movies a year. Mm-hmm. That's it. And Neon, another one, like these kind of, Vertical. There's a handful of these guys that just pick, they're very selective with the kind of films that they pick out. And they actually give it love, and they actually push it, and they actually put the whole company behind it. But some of these shops, they're just spitting out movies so much. It's a volume play, which is acquire as many films as I can and put them all into my library, and then try to sell them off to a streaming platform as a package deal, where, so they're just acquire for as long as I can keep them on the books, which makes me look better because my library is bigger and I look more attractive to the new streaming platforms or cable stations or whatever areas. But that necessarily means that they're going to do anything for them. So the value a lot of times, and please correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of times the value is in the number of films that are halfway decent, because there's distributors that will take anything, just to fill up their library and sell 20 crappy horror movies as a package deal to, South Korea. And they make $3,000 off that. And the filmmakers will never make any money. But if they try to sell that one film out of that 20, they'll never make it. Does that make sense? Am I wrong or right?
You're partially right, partially wrong. I'm going to defend their honor. Okay.
But that's fine.
So here's the thing. There are companies that do that, and that's their business model. But you're the filmmaker. You own the movie. It's your responsibility to make the right deal for you. Mm-hmm. They're not forcing you into anything. You're walking in their front door. You're saying, hey, let me interview you. Let's see if you're the right fit for this movie. And now let's see if we can make the right deal. The problem is the deals are bad. That's the problem. So I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about that, if you don't mind.
Please.
So these are not evil distributors, because what you just described, all you have to do is ask. All you have to do, if you need to know to ask that, if you don't want to be put in a package with 20 other films for that month, you need to say, hey guys, how many films do you acquire a month or release a month? And, do you package these things? But you got to ask those questions like you would in any business. So fair is fair. If you ask the questions, if they lie to you, they're bad people. Okay. Yeah. But chances are nobody's asked the question. So they're not even lying. They're not offering that information up. They're not, they might be omitting it, but you didn't ask. So you got to ask the right questions. All right. Let me tell you what happens. This is what I've taken some filmmakers to these kind of meetings. I mean, I generally do it for my own meetings, but this is my favorite kind of distribution meeting. And some of it is me messing around and just having fun. So I'll go to a distributor. And for those distributors who are listening to this, some of you actually may have been in these meetings with me where I've done this. Okay. So the first thing I say is, guys, the reason I'm here is because this is a third-party independent distributor. If I'm looking for a deal for one of my movies, right?
Okay.
I mean, I generally self-distribute now, but sometimes there are situations where I'll still do that for foreign or something like that. Mm-hmm. So, first thing is, guys, are you guys good at what you do? The answer is, I'm going to paraphrase. I'm just going to go through this. Hey, how you doing? Are you guys good at what you do? Jeff, we are the best in the business. Okay, we are the one thing that you can be sure and that it will be consistent with every single film company, distribution company you go to. They will all tell you we're the best in the business.
Sure.
The other say they're the best, but we are the best. Okay,
Obviously.
Okay, that's wonderful. I want to be dealing with the best. So I'm at the best. That's fantastic. Okay, got it. Now, you've watched my movie, hopefully, or the trailer or something like that.
At least. Maybe.
Is this a good fit for you? Oh, Jeff, we wouldn't be talking. You wouldn't be sitting there right now if this wasn't the right fit for us. Okay, so you're the best, and my movie can fit into your offerings.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Okay. So we're through that. Let's get to the next thing. All right, guys, give me just sort of an idea, an estimate as to what you'll sell. What's the gross revenue? And this is obviously a way more detailed conversation because we're talking, different windows and television, home entertainment, digital, obviously, all this kind of stuff. Just over the next, say, year, when you release this movie, give me a ballpark figure. And this is what distribution companies do. And
projections.
Yeah, give me some projections. What do you think it'll do? This is always the first answer. Well, Jeff, it's hard to say for sure. We don't know for sure.
The marketplace is changing.
Yeah, the marketplace, exactly, all that stuff. I say, okay, guys, you just told me you're the best at the business. Oh, by the way, the other thing is, like, how long have you been in business? Oh, 15 years. How many films you released? 500. And how many have you made money with? 490. Oh, so you guys really know what you're doing. You really, really know what you're doing. Okay, give me a forecast. Well, we can't really give you a forecast because we're not sure what's going to happen. Well, didn't you just say you released 500 films and you made money with 490? You must kind of know that and you're the best in the business. You must be able to give me a forecast. Otherwise, how would you be in business and how would you be so successful? Okay, you're right. Here's the forecast. We're going to do, and I'm just going to make up a number here. Okay?
Sure.
We're going to do $2 million in sales in the first year after release this. And here's how it works, blah, 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 blah. It's a ballpark.
Sure.
Now, and they always say, Jeff, we're actually probably going to do 4 million, but we need to be conservative in this conversation.
They always say that.
Yeah, okay. Because we're probably going to double what we say, but
at least. Yeah.
But let's say we're going to do 2 million. Okay?
And occasionally they'll go. And there was another film that we had that was just like yours that did 5 million. But I don't want to get you excited. I don't want to get you too hyped up.
Don't want to get you excited. Okay. So I say, okay, so you're pretty confident about that, and you kind of just whispered in my ear that you're going to do 4 million. So 2 million is pretty conservative, right? Can we use that as the number?
Yep.
Okay. Now we're going to just talk about we can get into details about this later, Alex, about the terms and the conditions about the contract. Ultimately, how much of that money am I going to see? Well, Jeff, we're not sure. Okay, let's get through.
But you're the best.
Okay. You're between your costs, your fees, sub-distribution, this, that, da, 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 da. Do you think it's fair to say I'm going to get 50% of that money? Yeah, 50%. You should get a lot more. You should probably get 60, 65%, but let's go with 50 just to be on the safe side, just so we don't set your expectations. Okay, so let's just do some simple math. So you said you're going to do conservatively $2 million in sales, and I'm going to get 50%. That would be $1 million, correct? Right. Okay. Guys, I have an idea. How about a minimum guarantee? Because you guys, you're the best in the business. You've had all this experience. You've just given me a conservative estimate. What about a minimum guarantee? What about giving me a minimum guarantee? Well, Jeff, we don't do that. We don't give minimum guarantees. I say, well, why wouldn't you? You just lowballed me in your sales figures. You lowballed me in my percentage. You're the best in the business and everything, and you've released all these films that are similar. You must be pretty confident. They said, well, what would you want? And I said, I got an idea. How about this? You told me 2 million in sales, which is really 4 million. You told me 50%, which is really 60%. So we're down to $1 million. I got this great, crazy idea. Just to be super conservative like you guys. Give me just half of what you think you were going to give me. So you were going to return $1 million to me. Give me 500,000 upfront guarantee, which is half. Jeff, are you out of your mind? Half of what but guys, why would I be out of my mind? Aren't you the guys who just told me that it should be a walk in the park slam dunk to do that? I'm looking for half of it. Yeah. If I was out of my mind, I'd ask you for all of it, but I just want half of it. Well, we can't do that. And I say, why can't you do that? Well, what if we don't sell it? Well, if you don't sell it, then you're not so good. Well, what if our numbers are wrong? Well, you do that.
You're the best.
You're the best. Your numbers are right. So, okay. So that's the game that gets played. Now,
oh my God. I've heard that. I've been in those meetings. It's fantastic. I was going to say, hey, just give me 10%. Give me $100,000. Their ass would have puckered either way. It doesn't matter. If you would have said, give me 10 grand, their ass would have puckered.
Okay. So now I'm going to tell you, okay. So that's from the filmmaker's point of view, right?
Sure.
Which is a reasonable ask, but it's a little bit irritating for distributors to go through it. But now I'm going to put myself on the distributor side of that equation. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you what's going through their heads.
Okay.
Their heads are, as that conversation is going on, this is what's processing through a smart, sophisticated distributor knows the business. Mm-hmm. They're saying, do we really need this guy's film? Like, that's number one. Do we need this bullshit? Do we need to talk to this guy? Like, is he wasting our time? We're going to have 19 other films this month. Do we need to go through this with this guy? Like, how important is this movie? So let's say if it's not important, it's over. At that point, they don't need the hassle. They don't need to negotiate. It's over. But let's say, hey, the guy's got a pretty good movie. We could probably make some serious money off of it. Let's keep this conversation going. So let's get past that, okay? So then the second thing they're thinking is, okay, the guy's asking some of the right questions, and he's being a bit cocky, and he's, trying to move the needle here and there. But how much does he really know? Like, we could put this guy into play, and we'll screw him royally. Like, I will, and I'm going to tell you how that works afterwards, okay? Mm-hmm. Do we really want to put him into play? If we do, we'll take his film. We're not giving him $500,000 guarantee, even though we love the film and we really are going to make a lot of money with it. We'll be able to, I can read in his eyes. We'll lowball this guy. It's a poker game, Alex. That's all it is. It's just a poker game.
Sure.
I'm going to call the guy's bluff. I'm going to call, not going to go all in, but we'll put 200,000 on the table, and he'll bite because he's anxious, and we'll get him back. At the end of the day, it's all going to come.
He'll never see another dime.
He'll see another penny anyway. So what the heck, right? Let's just do that.
And we know for sure. And we have as a distributor, I'm like, we know this is already pre-sold. We can go to this guy for 50,000. We can go to that guy for 150,000. We can go to that guy for another 2.
Correct.
So we'll cover our nut automatically. So there's no way a distributor is going to put money down unless they have an absolute 99.9% guarantee that they're going to get that money recouped. Is that fair?
No, that's not fair. I mean, they'll take a little bit of risk, but maybe 25% risk. That's not 99.9.
Okay, all right.
And these days,
and it has to be these days they don't generally anyway, because it's just
yeah.
Okay.
But no, if they're in love with your movie and they think they can make some serious money with it, a little bit of it, not a ton, a ton, maybe 20% at the most. I don't know. It's hard to peg that number. Everybody's different. Okay, but they're not taking 100% risk. Obviously, they know already that they have some output deals, that they have some, like you say, preset, revenue streams.
They have relationships that they could call up Bob over in Germany, and Bob's going to buy
pretty
a
well.
film. Yeah.
Yeah. So after you leave that meeting, they're going to make some phone calls, make sure that they're good to go, and then they're going to give you your money. But the other thing they know is that they're in first position on everything. So even if disaster strikes, it's going to be pretty difficult for them to lose that money because they've been so conservative with you. And again, now I can do the math with you.
So can you stop 1 second? I want everyone to listen to this really quickly. You said something I want to just focus on for a second. You said that they're not going to take 100% of the risk, but the filmmaker is taking 100% risk signing with them because they're not in control. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, okay. That's the bottom line right there. Here's the thing. Here's how this works. Okay. A filmmaker, if you don't do pre-sales, which we'll talk about afterwards. Okay. You are, by making a movie, you're taking 100% risk with the entire budget because you don't know for sure you're going to make any sales. You assume you are. You assume there's going to be an audience, and you assume you're going to get some revenue. But because you don't have anything pre-sold, pre-negotiated, it's not a sure thing. So it's 100% risk that a filmmaker takes. All right. we'll talk, like I say, we'll talk about how to mitigate that risk. I mean, there's obviously tax credits and there's pre-sales and revenue. Okay. But without any of that stuff, you're taking 100% of the risk. Now you walk in the door of a distributor and they say, we love this movie. Or let's say they see you at a film festival. They watch it and they say, we need this movie. So some of them will say, hey, let's just buy this movie outright and cover the guy, the filmmaker. This happens still. It happens extremely rarely.
But it does happen. Yeah.
Yeah. They say, you know what? We know darn well, because like everything we went through, we're the best. We're experienced. We've done this, Let's pick up this movie. And we're going to need to take some risk, because if we don't, the next person's going to pick up this movie because it's so good. And, if we take some risk, we can hopefully make a lot of money with it. So they will take some risk, for something that they're in love with and they really believe in. It's generally not 100% of risk. It's not as much risk as the filmmaker took usually for indie films, but it could be. It could be more than that. You could make a film for, $2 million. They could pick it up for $4 million. And that, that's obviously the anomaly in the filmmaker's dream. It doesn't happen too often.
Right.
But, it could. All right. So that for the most part, they might be taking maximum 50% of the risk. Like picking up a $2 million film for $1 million, maybe.
Yeah, and again, we're talking anomalies. We're talking outliers.
Yeah, outliars. I would say on average, it's 10,
10 no, like 10 films a year, 15 films a year out of I don't know, maybe more than that. But at Sundance, which is where something like that would happen, or at South by or Toronto, that's rare. It's still rare, especially in today's world.
Yes, it is. It is rare. It's getting more rare. Mm-hmm. And there's reasons for that, which I'd like to talk about also afterwards.
Of course.
I believe that's happening. Okay, so you're right. So they're not in the business of taking a lot of risk unless they're really, really, really in love with the movie and it's something about it is super special and they think they can make a ton of money with it. And it's not even that risky, because they kind of can make those phone calls quickly and say, hey, or they have output deals, or they have something where they know that they can recoup some of that investment.
All right. So you were saying, okay, so let's go back to where you were talking about as far as the deal was concerned. So from the distributor's point of view. So now let's say we got the filmmaker on the hook. Okay. We got their film. Let's say that they barely covered the MG. And again, the MG is a rarity anyway, but let's say that they covered the MG and that's topped out. There's very little bit money, or they make maybe a little bit more money off the MG. How does the distributor in their mindset? Well, let's just ask the question. How are they going to get screwed? How are the filmmakers going to get screwed in the deal? Like, what are those kind of little things?
Now, I don't know if I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts, but I haven't heard this one yet. And I don't know if this is going to be super boring. Do you mind if we do a little bit of mathematics? Because I think everyone
listening would like to do some mathematics.
So I'll explain how the math works. All right.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's how it works. So let's use a $1 million film. Or let's do a $500,000 film, okay? Mm-hmm. All right, just so we have round numbers, all right? And then, of course, we could extrapolate higher, lower, or higher, okay? But let's just so that we can throw some numbers around, all right? Okay, so you make a movie for $500,000. That's your final cost, everything in, all right? That's what you're on the hook for. Okay, now let's say that you give it to a distributor, and they go out and they generate $500,000 worth of revenue for the movie. Okay. Now that's what we call gross revenue. It's raw basic revenue that comes from the customers that they're dealing with, the original customers, the people, the consumers. All right. So in the case of, say, a theatrical release, a consumer is, a person who goes and buys a ticket at the box office. That's a consumer. So when somebody spends, $12 to go to a movie, or $15, that's considered gross revenue, $15. All right. Now, how much of that flows back to the filmmaker? So here's how the math works. All right. So put all that gross revenue into so that would be like, let me give you some examples of gross revenue. Going to, like what I just said, going to the box office, spending $15 on a movie ticket. Okay. Going on to a streaming service, renting for $4.99. That's $5 gross rental. Okay. That's consumer. On the buying a DVD. 1099 or whatever. Okay. On the business side, it would be, selling to a broadcast sale, $50,000 or $100,000 for. So this is all goes into the gross revenue pool. This is how much money was spent by consumers who were consuming that film. In the case of a television station, they're putting it up obviously on their station and they're paying a license fee. Okay. So there's $500,000. So a naive filmmaker will say, wow, I made my film for 500 and people spent 500. So therefore it should be break even. There's obviously, yeah. Okay. So let's get down to the next level. All right. Most of the distribution deals that you're going to do with a third party distributor do not happen directly. So they'll go, even the really good companies, a lot will have half their, let's say I'm going to give them, probably more benefit than I should. Half of their deals they'll do directly, let's say on television. Half of this TV license deals, they'll sell directly to that TV broadcaster. The other half, they'll sell through sub-distributors. Whether it could be like foreign sales where they don't talk the language, or by law, you have to deal with a local company like in Italy or something like that, where they encourage you, or France, if you want to do a deal. And again, I'm just making up territories, but there are sales where it makes more sense, or it's more viable to put it through a local sub-distributor or agent. So those people are going to take a part of the pie. All right. And I'll go through the pie in a second. Okay. Then let's say you go through an aggregator, which you have to do to go onto Apple TV, let's say.
And distributors still have to pay an aggregator, just like a filmmaker would have to pay an aggregator.
That is correct. There's only so many access points, so they have to pay that too. So that's like using a third-party distributor. So there's going to be a fee there. Okay? So ultimately, what we have to get down to is what we call net revenue, which is, let's take all those third-party sub-distribution aggregator fees and look at the box office. I mean, I don't do a lot of theatrical. I did 1 year in the theatrical distribution business, and they have these film settlements. Obviously, for gigantic studio films, they're different, but for indie films, the theater, basically the theater/distributor is going to take 50% of the box office fees. If you're lucky, if that's all they take, plus all your costs that are coming up too. But like the film receipts from theatrical distribution, you're only going to see maximum 50% of them, for an indie film. A studio, like I say, has the clout. They'll get better deals. All right. So at the end of the day, basically that $500,000 is going to get diluted down to about $275,000. You're going to see about 55% of it on average, because there's going to be 30% distribution fees and sub-distributors and 25% platform fees and aggregator fees and net this, net that.
But you never even talked about marketing or delivery costs.
I'm getting there. One thing at a time. Don't worry, I got all the math figured out.
Okay, good.
I did this for 20 years. I know how. Let's not rush. Okay?
Forgive me, sir. Forgive me. Continue.
Okay. So that gross revenue that consumers spent, like the initial $500,000 of money that was collected in the sales of your movie, will get netted down to about $275,000. All right, which will be what the pool is that you're going to share from. All right, and it could be 300,000, 325. Like I'm netting it down 45%. That might be maybe high.
It might be low. It could be low, actually.
It could be low. Okay. I think it's in the ballpark.
Sure.
Right? Okay. So now the pool is what we call net revenue is $275,000. Net receipts, $275,000. All right. So now the distributor is going to take, your third-party distributor is going to generally take a 30% fee. I mean, you can maybe negotiate a better deal, but let's just go with that. All right. So they're going to go 30%. Now, here's the first screw point, all right? This is where you can get royally screwed if you don't make the right deal and make sure the wording is correct. That 30%, is that 30% off of the gross revenue that was originally, sold, or is it 30% off the net revenue? Now, as basic as that sounds, like it should be off the net revenue, because the receipts coming back to the distributor is the $275,000. But they might say, no, we're taking 30% off the gross of the 500,000. I mean, that's a gigantic difference, right? It's $150,000, 30% of 50. So that is a notorious way that sometimes this happens. Okay, it shouldn't. And that I would say is immoral. Okay, It should come off the 275, right?
But again, it's not that they mean to screw you. It just happens organically.
Well, it's in the deal, Alex. It's built into the deal.
Of course.
And if you don't ask for it, if you say, hey guys, where's your fee coming off of? Then, it's the same thing. Look, and we'll continue after this. It's the same thing if you go buy a car at a car dealership and don't ask the right questions. If they're gonna charge you for upkeep. They're gonna charge you for maintenance fees and upgrade packages and all that stuff. Unless you say, ask the right questions. Same thing with a house, like your example. If you don't ask the right things, if you don't get an inspection on the house, and if you don't know to get an inspection on the house, you could be buying a lemon. You could be buying something with a cracked foundation, and you could lose your entire investment. You need to ask the right questions. It's not, and just like a realtor, just like a car dealer, they're not going to offer it up. That's unfortunately business. Okay. But hopefully that's the major hurdle is make sure that the distribution fee is coming off of the net revenue, not the gross revenue. Now, they might say, hey, some of it has to come off of gross because we did the sale, as opposed to a third part, where are the third party fees coming? Who's covering them and all that kind of stuff. So I could go into a lot of detail. This is obviously a whole area, right? Okay. So the next thing is the marketing costs, which, you just asked me about. So let's say, now here's the thing about marketing costs, Alex. This is the interesting thing where filmmakers, you have to really think about this, okay? You want your distributor to spend money because you want them to market your film. You actually want to encourage them to spend money so that they can create awareness for your film so that you can they can increase the sales. You don't want them to not spend a lot there. Now, but what you do want them to spend is you want it to spend it wisely on the right things. And you don't want them to mark it up too much. So here's a perfect example, okay? If they'll want to cut a trailer for you. You make they're going to want to cut a trailer. They're going to charge you, $30,000 to $40,000 to cut a trailer that you probably could have either cut yourself or negotiated, $3,000 to $5,000 to cut the trailer because
comfortably.
Yeah. But that, fair is fair. You want them to do it for you. They're gonna spend a lot more money doing it because that's.
But by the way, their cost is about $3,000 to hire the editor. Their in-house editor. Look, I was in post for 25 years, so I know what I did many trailers. I know what the cost of a trailer is from and I know what high-end trailer editors make. Even on the low-end trailer editor, there's no way it's $30,000 or $40,000. It's just not. It's just. Okay.
But it could be that they say we hired it out to a high-end trailer company and they charge 20 and we're taking another 10 for managing it and blah blah blah. I mean,
wow, that's a heck of a good management fee.
Okay, but that's how it works.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
Okay, but all you got to do to prevent that is say how much you're spending, where's the money going. You gotta ask those questions. Fair is fair. You get to ask those questions. If you don't, you might not catch any of that stuff. All right. Then there's delivery costs, which are, used to be there was physical delivery. It's mostly digital delivery now, but it's still, there's costs, there's processing, there's QCing, there's all this kind of stuff that it's real. These costs are very real. But they also can get very marked up.
Very.
You got to be paying attention to the costs. All right. Okay, and then there is, stuff that I call miscellaneous ancillary stuff.
Don't forget the poster too. The poster is always a nice little place they mark up things. Artwork as well.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, then there's festival fees and market fees and all this kind of stuff. So this is a new thing that has happened in the last decade with distributors. I've noticed that they're just charging a flat fee. Like I'm going to take you to Cannes or AFM or something, and I'm going to charge you $7,500 flat. That's your fee to be part of my offering at the marketplace. It's questionable too. Look at. There's no question. It's super expensive to attend these markets in defense of the distributors. The booths are ridiculously costly. You got all these people traveling and all this kind of stuff. But like you say, some people have 20 films, some have 10, whatever. They make money that way. That's a very good source of revenue to cover their costs and potentially mark it up also. And again, they're not necessarily evil. It's a business model. That's who they are and what they do. So by the time you're all said and done, and you take away those distribution fees that are coming off of hopefully the net revenues and not the gross revenues, and the marketing costs are, let's call them 10%. Let's call the delivery costs like 3.5%. The festival fees 2.5%. Blah blah blah. You are down to 46% of the net revenue, which is 9% of the gross revenue that was you're down to the $500,000 that was generated for your movie. You're going to get $45,000 when all is said and done. And again, I'd be happy to send you the math and show you how that. I mean, I'm looking at a spreadsheet as I'm talking.
Sure. You're
going to get $45,000 if the movie generates a $500,000 movie generates $500,000 in receipts, gross receipts. Now, if the $500,000 budget generates $1 million in gross receipts, I can do the numbers a little differently. But in order to break even, probably on a $500,000, the gross receipts have to be about 1.1 or 1.2 million to get back the entire 500,000.
So I love the numbers. I think the math is great. I think that you're being very optimistic in your projections in that there's not more costs involved as far as
but remember, I sort of interrupt you, but I'm talking about monitoring your costs. I mean, you can say to a distributor, I want you to spend an extra $20,000, on this market and buy some art, some posters and some,
billboards and stuff.
They spend billboards and all that kind of stuff. They may or may not do it because that's a risk because they're putting that money up. But if you're guaranteeing it or they believe there's enough revenue or whatever, then they'll do it. They'll deduct it. They'll charge you a little bit of a premium because, there's servicing and there is labor involved in doing all this kind of stuff. So you're right. They can spend a lot more. I'm talking about monitoring it, like saying, reasonably speaking, 10%, should do it. But
reasonably speaking. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, because I've seen breakdowns before on some of these deals and it's just like, it's abusive. It's abusive. It can get, if you're not looking, it's like anything, man. If you're not watching The Babysitter with your baby.
That's correct.
Things, all of a sudden the baby's out in the street and gets hit by a car. Like it happens if you're not keeping an eye on it all the time. All right. So continue.
Yeah. You got to pay attention. I mean, and like a lot of filmmakers, number one, don't know how to pay attention because they don't know what to ask. Right. So it's fair. And number two, it's kind of a pain in the neck to pay attention. Like it's a lot of attention,
I'm an artist. I don't want to think about this.
Exactly.
Stuff.
You don't want to have to babysit this. Like you're hiring a distributor to do a job. You want to trust them. They're going to do a good job because they know what they're doing. You just want it to be fair and honest. That's where this whole predatory distributor thing, Alex, you're talking about honesty. That's what you're really talking about.
Oh, it's a trust. It's absolute trust, but that's trust in any business deal.
That's
when
correct.
You sign an agreement with any kind of business across all industries, you're trusting the other person's going to do what they say.
That's correct. Okay. And report it properly at the end. Now, this is assuming with the numbers I ran through that they all get reported properly. Obviously.
Oh yeah.
Some holes in the reporting too. Obviously, things.
So things can get a little gray, in the sense of reporting. So they could say, oh, we got 500,000 but we really only report back a little bit. And that's with predatory. I'm not saying all distributors. And I've always been very clear about that, saying not all distributors are predatory. I just say most, but not all.
But the example I just gave you was like full reporting. Like, here's what really happened. This is how it all flowed, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Yeah. If somebody generated 500 in revenue and only, showed 400 in reports, then, that's a problem. That's immoral, illegal. Yeah. So that's very predatory, but I wasn't going there yet.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens. There's no question it happens. And you have to, you also have to have recourse clauses in your contract, i.e. audit.
Yes.
And arbitration. And I've gone down that route before, and I've found things, and I could tell you stories. I don't want to implicate anybody, but it happens.
So in my book, in my distribution book, in Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, the distribution chapter, you said this the other day when we first started speaking. You're like, Alex, you were absolutely right. Where you get screwed by a distributor, you know that they're doing. You try to audit them, and they're like, no. Then you sue them. You take them to court. And then at the end of this whole experience, they go, "Oh, our bad. Here's the money."
Yeah, made a mistake.
Made a mistake. Sorry.
You have a $50,000 legal fee that ate up your entire extra money that you found, if that.
And they know that. So they're like, "Okay, well, let's mitigate our risk here." So like, if we take $50,000 from this filmmaker, it's going to cost them $50,000 to fight us in court for it. So they're probably just going to not deal with us at that point, right? It's kind of like the olden days with the old car manufacturers. They're like, oh, well, that one part is killing. How many people are going to die because of that part? And how much are we going to have to pay out? Like, they didn't care about life. They were looking at it strictly as a business transaction. Like, well, if they kill only 1,000 people, if those 1,000 people sue us, how much can we have to spend? Oh, we'll have to spend $100 million. Well, how much will it cost to pull the thing back off? Oh, it's going to cost us $200 million. Oh no, well, screw it. Just leave it out there.
Okay, Alex, with all due respect, you are a bit jaded.
I'm absolutely jaded.
Yeah, you're a bit jaded, and for good reason. For good reason.
You've made me more jaded.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I'm not as jaded, even though I deal with this. I'm, in the weeds in the jungle every single day on this kind of stuff. I just feel comfortable knowing what to ask for and know what to look for. So if
you know how to make the sausage, but you know how to make the sausage.
Tell me. At least they're going to say, okay, this is where you're going to get screwed. And if you don't like it, don't sign the deal. Too bad. And
but you're coming from a perspective of knowledge. You're coming from a perspective of experience. So you understand how the sausage is made on the other side of the table. So it's a completely different perspective than 99.9% filmmakers have.
I feel like I have a fair seat at the table and I get to have a fair discussion. Right. And I don't necessarily, get everything I ask for or, and people say if you don't like it, too bad. That's the best we're offering it. But at least I feel like we've had a reasonable, fair discussion and there's nothing that I haven't really thought of.
And have you been sitting in those meetings with these distributors and they just go, yeah, we can't work with you.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. No, absolutely. Listen, I just did the math. Here's the major thing that, like, I would say the highest priority in a film distribution agreement that you have to get. It would be what I call a performance clause. Like, you talk about these 15-year deals. I think that's nuts, right? But a 15-year deal is not nuts if they're performing. So what you really need is you need to say, as long as you guys keep hitting these thresholds, these targets, and you're making this much money and returning it to me, then we can keep going. Or we can do auto renewals. Like, let's do a 3-year deal with 5 auto renewals, assuming you hit a target every year that we pre-negotiate. Like here, you hit $1 million this year, 1.8 million next year, And if you're hitting the targets, you want them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's the major clause you want to put in is performance, because if it's not working, primarily it's not working for both sides, but if you don't put that, you can't pull it. And it's an optional, like I call these performance clauses, they're options that the filmmaker has. So you do this deal, let's say you do, say, a 3-year deal as opposed to a 15-year deal, and you say, okay, at the end of 3 years or at the end of 2.5 years, if you have this much revenue generated and reported to me,
and a check in hand.
Correct. Then then the deal can automatically renew. If not, I have the option of pulling the deal, terminating the deal. Because, you might want to keep, it's pretty close and you think they're doing good and, COVID hits and something changes and, you don't want it to automatically terminate. Mm-hmm. So you give yourself an option. It's a reasonable thing to ask for.
Do reasonable distributors generally say okay for that? I mean, why wouldn't if a distributor says no to that situation, to that ask, shouldn't you just run away? Because obviously
you should. No, I'll tell you why. Here's the thing. At the end of the day, the film business is a business like everything else. All right. Can I just get down to sort of the core basic thing before I go to where I want to go?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah. There's 2 reasons why an indie filmmaker should be an indie filmmaker. There are two reasons, all right? Reason number one is because, well, there's actually three reasons. One is, as you call it, you get the disease. You just get this,
the bug.
You get this bug, this virus that you just need to do this in your life. You're not sure why, but it's sexy, it's appealing, it's fun. It's a great industry, by the way. It's a lot of fun, and you enjoy it a lot. Project-based, completely different, changing all the time, very interactive, social. There's so many elements of the film business that make it so attractive, right? Mm-hmm. So you get the bug, all right? But the major reason you want to become an indie filmmaker and put yourself out there and kill yourself and put yourself at financial risk and do all this kind of stuff is because you got a story to tell. Like, you generally want to tell the world a story, or in the case of a documentary, send a very strong message that could potentially change the world or become your legacy, and you're making a contribution to the world, and you're doing it in a very fun art form that people can absorb and consume across the world. I mean, that's a very compelling reason to be a filmmaker, as it is to be an author, or a musician. I mean, it's an artistic statement of a message. And so that's the main reason you should be a filmmaker, all right? The second reason is hopefully you can make some money. Like, you can have a good life and make a good living from it. All right, that's becoming, less and less, as we know. It's more of a struggle to do that in the arts, all the arts, not just, as you know, music, all this kind of stuff. So, but if you're going into the movie business primarily and only because you want to tell a story and you're not worried about the money, then this is a whole different conversation. All right, that's an artistic conversation, and all we are going to talk about is how to best tell your story at the most cost-effective price. Mm-hmm. But if you're going in because you actually want to hopefully at least recoup your budget, or at least maybe make some money and make a living, hopefully become rich, but at least, have enough to make a living, then that's the discussion that I'm having here. All right. This is about becoming a career filmmaker and making a living at being a filmmaker, as opposed to just making a film and having your fun and, whether it's a midlife crisis or something like that, and making this artistic statement for the world that you want to do. I'm talking about being a career filmmaker where you make a living at it. So you have to be very smart. So you have to be, in addition to a good artist who makes, good quality films, you have to be a savvy business person, because it's the film business. The film is the art. The business is the business. So I'm talking about the whole business side. All right. So assuming that you want to monetize your movies and get your money back, you got to be pre-thinking about a lot of this kind of stuff. All right. Before you make your movies, as we know, as you talk about it a lot. Mm-hmm. And, so when you said to me, if a distributor says, hey, I'm not interested in your movie or something like that, or I'm not going to give you the right deal, do you walk away? It's a business decision. I mean, most people think that's an artistic decision. Mm-hmm. It's not artistic. The artistic decision's already been done. You've already made your movie. This is strictly a business decision, right? Like I said, it's a poker game. Do you think you got a better hand? Do you think you're going to get a better card on the next? Do you want to fold? Do you want to play, make the bet and try to get the next card? I mean, it's a business decision. So here's the thing about the business decision. I mean, you got to hopefully you're armed with all the right things in order to make a good decision. That's what I've been talking about this whole podcast so far, is getting you, up to the filmmakers understanding the tools they need, or the elements they have to understand in order to make a good decision. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's a business decision is a risky decision, right? Like, show me a business where you make a decision and it's not 100% sure thing. There's always going to be like anything, like, I talk about real estate. Like, you buy a house and you say, hey, I'm buying the house for lifestyle because I want to live there, but hopefully it's going to appreciate in value. You don't know that. You go through all the motions and say, well, it's a good neighborhood and good schools and good this and good that, and the cost of living is going up, so therefore in 10 years my house will be worth this much. You don't know that for sure. You're taking a chance with that. You do know that you're buying a house that you're going to like to live in. That's the artistic side of it.
And there's value in there. Yeah.
On the emotional side, absolutely. But the financial side, you're taking a bit of a risk. So should you walk from a distribution deal? You should only walk if you believe that you don't trust the person. It's a trust thing. If you don't trust the other guy, walk. But if you believe that you're getting a little bit screwed on the deal, if it's still, and you've asked the right questions and it's still within the range of reasonable. Might be the far end range, the very far end range. It might be worth taking that deal. Because remember, on their side, it's like, okay, if the guy doesn't take the deal, you know what? We got 50 other filmmakers lined up at the door. And do we really need this film? Is it going to really change our lives? Probably not. Because if it is, they're going to let you walk.
So with the analogy of the house, the big difference is of taking a risk with a house is you do have an asset that can be sold regardless. That asset will be sold maybe a little less than you sold it, maybe a little bit more, but you will make money back. With a film, it could literally have zero value. Like literally lose everything. Like nobody will buy it. And there are films that are made like that all the time that are done, spent $1 million on, and they make very, very little money with it because of obvious reasons, artistic reasons, business decisions, and things like that. But I feel that if this is just my personal opinion, if you lay a performance clause out for a distributor and it's a reasonable performance clause, whatever that performance clause is, it's reasonable.
Yeah.
And they say, nah, we don't do that. That's a red flag to me. Now, mind you, if you have a 3-year deal, that's different. If it's a 3-year deal, it's a 3-year deal. I mean, performance clause is generally going to be a 3-year deal. It's not going to be a 12-month deal, generally speaking, with a performance clause.
Whoa. No, not necessarily.
Sometimes. All right, so tell me.
Well, first of all, let's just go to your first point. Not all houses appreciate in value. I mean, if you had a house that you bought in 2004 and tried to sell it in 2008, you probably lost a lot of money.
A little bit. But there's still value. There's inherent value in the property.
There's an asset value. There's no question. Okay. So if you're going to make a film that has no inherent asset value, maybe you ought to think twice before you make that film. Just like any other decision. Sir. Okay, fair enough. Now, secondly, you're sitting in that meeting and you got to know what the inherent value of that film is. That's why I say it's a business deal. It shouldn't be emotional. You got to think, okay, they're talking, I believe in my heart of hearts after all the discussions and negotiations that they're going to return 80% of my budget to me. So I'm still probably going to be out 20%. But is that better than the next deal I can get, or can I even get another deal? That's where the business decision comes in. And that's where you have to be realistic and be a business person and step up and act, step away from being that emotional filmmaker and become just a business negotiator. Listen, that's why a lot of filmmakers use agents. Mm-hmm. That's why a lot of people in real estate use agents. I'm not that kind of guy. You see, I don't even like to use real estate agents. I like to negotiate my own deals. Just my personality is like that. But I mean, a lot of people don't want, it's emotional. So you don't want to have to go and fight that fight and maybe compromise more than you want to. And sometimes you walk away from what seems to be not a great deal, but it might be the only deal you can get. So even though, like I say, you might lose 20% going into it and end up losing, 40%, that might be better than walking away from a deal and not getting any other deal. But that's a business decision.
Fair enough.
And it's a tough decision.
Yeah.
All right.
It's all relative to if there are other options. If you have other options, then and you want the deal doesn't make sense to you, you can walk. But if not, you're right. Like if this is it and you're not going to be able to self-distribute and you don't have the knowledge or the experience or the movie or any of that stuff to do it, this might be it. And this is where I see that distributors take advantage of filmmakers because they know that they don't have another option. And the filmmaker would just go, well, all right, I just take it. At least it'll get released. And that's the big default.
Why do you say take advantage? I mean, look at it from the distributor point of view. Like, the film's good, but it's not great. There's 10 other films that they can get that are equally as good. They don't need it. In some ways they're saying to themselves, hey, we'll do the guy a favor. He's a nice guy, killed himself making the film, and we could give this deal to somebody else, but we'll give it to him because he's so eager and anxious. And yeah, is he going to make his money back? No, but you know what? He should have thought of that before he made the film because, we're not. But they're
going to make, but the difference is though, Jeff, they're going to make money off that film.
Yeah,
and they're not going to share it with the filmmaker. That I can promise you.
They're not going to totally screw the filmmaker, but based on their time and effort and their opportunity cost, this is what it's all about. Mm-hmm. Let's say, like you say, they're going to release 10 films a month. So to get into their slate, like you got to they got to choose the best 10 that they're going to make the most amount of money with. And if they're going to stick this one in, it means that the other one didn't get in. So fair is fair. Like they're trying to pick the best mix for their business that they can do.
And that's in that scenario. I mean, it depends. It's all so relative because it all depends on the scenario. There could be that distributor that is releasing 50 or 60 movies, or it could be the distributor is releasing 2 or 3 movies. So it's all relative to. It's
all real good. The thing that you are dealing with in most of your materials is, when you're talking about the predatory film distributor, by the way, which I don't disagree with. It all boils down to one word, but all of business boils down to one word. Pretty well all relationships boil down to one word. It's called trust. That's all it is. It's trust. Really, when you're interviewing a film distributor or anybody else, even the people on your crew that are going to make your movies and stuff like that.
Absolutely. You're trusting the DP knows what they're talking about.
Absolutely. And you're going to pay them, and but you're trusting that you're going to get what you pay for. And you're trusting in a film distributor that you're going to get the relationship and the honesty that you're hoping for. And, there's a lot of stuff that you can build into a contract to make them accountable to be trustworthy. And that's what I'm talking about, just accountability. Okay. Once in a while, you're going to come across, a bad apple. It's just the way it is, But
look, so when you say bad apple, I want to ask you this question. Do you believe that there is a systemic problem ingrained in the model? Because there's a lot of kind of like pump and dump kind of methods here. Like, we're going to get the best deal possible. We really don't truly care about the filmmaker on the other side of this table because he's not asking the right questions. And by doing that, you've basically, as you're a distributor, you're doing that. You've pretty much taken that filmmaker out of the equation for future product. So slowly, but as an industry, shouldn't we try? I'm not saying to be Mother Teresa here, but to try to structure deals in a way that is somewhat reasonable, even if the filmmaker is not as wise as you are. Because I mean, there are companies out there that do that. I know of them personally, that they kind of like, look, you don't know what's going on, but we're going to structure this deal so you can make some money off of this, so you can come back to us in 3 or 4 years and keep bringing product to us. Do you believe that there's an issue, just as a general statement, with the distribution model since Chaplin's day, for God's sake?
Yeah. So you're making an assumption that I don't make.
Okay.
You're making an assumption that the film business is production and distribution. And I say those are not one business, those are 2 businesses.
Correct.
Film production is one business, film distribution is another business. So those 2 aren't necessarily woven together. So it's not like we get together as an industry, because the producers are different than the distributors. So the distributors are going to have their ways and the producers will have their ways. So, but you want to talk about systemic problem? I'll tell you the systemic problem. You're going to love hearing this because it's true and you darn well know this. The systemic problem is that filmmakers don't ever learn anything about business. They go to film school and all they learn about is production. They learn camera and lighting and all this kind of stuff. Like, where's the courses that teach all the stuff we're talking about? Why? And by the way, the filmmakers, as you know, they don't even want to talk about it. They're artists and they're not business people. They just want to do their art. They want to make their movies and all this kind of stuff. And unfortunately, you don't have the luxury in this business of being unless you have, like, you should get yourself, if you want to be the artist, get yourself a producing partner who just wants to be the business person. I liken it to, I don't know if you've watched, used to watch the show Silicon Valley.
Oh, I saw. I just finished the season. Like, yes, literally last night I watched the last episode.
Okay, so Silicon, it's fantastic. Richard is he's the creator. And he surrounds himself with the business people. And that's the way it works. And if you want to move forward, because you can't be everything. You can try to be, but you're going to feel compromised. And most filmmakers just want to be the artists, which is fine. They got to bring somebody close to them who can navigate the business side, or they got to navigate the business side. That's the systemic problem, is that they're going to be taken advantage of, not only in that component, but maybe other components of their life too, if they don't
educate themselves
and take charge. Yeah. So I'm not blaming the distributors. Can they be a little less predatory and evil? Yeah, probably. They could probably they could tone it back a bit, is what you're saying. They could tone it back a bit. They could put more on the table. They could be more honest. They could help people through it. Like, I often say to people, like I told you this, Alex, so I take a lot of interns on my sets, right?
Yeah.
And I often say, you can ask me anything you like. And then they start asking me, and I say, no, so hold on a second. You're not asking me the right question, guys. Don't ask me, what lens to use on this, shot. That's easy. Ask me how you're going to do a distribution deal. Ask me what the rate should be, what percent. Ask me those questions. You have, you're sitting here with, the guy who knows that stuff. Spend the time to ask me those questions. But you know what? They're not interested. Which leads me, I told you a story the other day and you said you want me to tell it.
Yes, please tell it.
Okay. So this is a perfect example of this whole systemic problem. And, for you filmmakers out there who are listening to this. So I go to a lot of the markets because I self-distribute. So I was going to MIPCOM a couple years ago, which is the big sort of television broadcast market in Cannes, France. It happens twice a year. There's MIPTV and MIPCOM. MIPCOM's usually in the fall. Obviously, this year it's all messed up because of COVID. But okay, so I'm going to MIPCOM, and I say I had done a film a couple of years ago with this other guy, and he's a great guy, great filmmaker, director of the movie, blah, blah, blah. And I kept saying, you need to know about distribution. I'm not saying you need to do it. You need to know about it. You need to understand. Yeah. You need to just experience it in order to become sort of a well-rounded filmmaker. So at least when it's talked about, you have an awareness. I'm not asking you to switch gears and leave filmmaking and become a distributor. I'm just asking you to be exposed to it so that you can see it. I got this idea. Come with me to Cannes, France. We're going to the south of France. It's going to be a beautiful trip and everything like that. We're going to go to the market. I'm going to walk you through and I'm going to expose you to what really goes on in that side of the business. Well, what filmmaker wouldn't say yes to that? So, we're going to Cannes, right? So we get there, and Cannes MIPCOM is from Monday to Thursday every year. It's a 4-day market. So we get there Sunday night. We go to the opening party. All is good. He likes it. Lots of filmmakers running around, lots of champagne and fun and everything, right? The next morning, we walk up to the Palais. Some of you may have seen it. It's where the Cannes Film Festival takes place. The stairs, the whole conference center is decked out in billboards and graphics and everything. And it's a heyday. It's a circus. It's amazing, right? And his jaw drops. He looks at this, we walk up to the front stairs of the Palais, and he looks up and he sees all these films and this and that, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I had no idea that this actually happens, right? We walk into the Palais, and for those of you who've been there, the first floor, they call it the dungeon. It is just booth after booth after booth. There's no lights there. That's why. If there's no natural light, you actually go downstairs. So I wanted to walk him through the entire market and let him experience it literally floor by floor. It's 7 floors in the main building, and all over the place. So we start downstairs. And you go literally, Alex, there's hundreds of booths on every floor, different countries, different styles of, animation and live action and documentary and all this kind of stuff. And it's sort of organized, but it's sort of not. It's primarily usually by country, but it's all over the place. Anyways, you walk through and I'm explaining, okay, take a look. You think that the movie you made was unique. You're going to see 50 similar movies, in the next 20 minutes as you walk by. You're going to see 100 different styles of this and different languages. Anyways, suffice it to say, the first day, we get there at 9 a.m. when it opens and we leave at 6. And for the most part on the first day, all I did was we didn't do very few meetings that day. It was primarily orientation, walking through, explaining how the whole market works and showing them different stuff. So it was observation, and it's overwhelming. It's overwhelming because there's so much product and so many countries and so many cultures and people and everything. And it's like a bee's nest in there. It's just, more so back then than it is now. But anyways, we at the end of the day, we go to have a beer, and I said, "What'd you think?" He goes, I'm mentally exhausted. There was so much, I saw so much going on. I'm mentally exhausted. And I said, this is nothing. Wait till tomorrow. Anyways, have a nice dinner. Okay. The next morning because the next morning, Tuesday, was all meetings. Back to, because I missed Monday for the meetings, I just put everything back to back. And I do half-hour meetings. And I did probably 22 meetings set up, all back to back with a 1 hour break for lunch so that you can take, and literally we're just going one after the other, different languages, different cultures, different people. But these are buyers more or less that I've either dealt with before or other distributors from different countries where I want to sell my stuff to them. And when you've done enough markets, you get to know some of the people, but you only have half an hour. And sometimes it takes 10 minutes just to walk between a meeting. So you really only have 20 minutes, and everybody's always late. So that's 5 minutes of being late. So you have 15 minutes, 5 minutes of pleasantries. You get down to business. You got 10 minutes to talk about what you really want to talk about, if that. So you get into it, and it's like just one after the other. So at the end of day 2, he says to me, "Oh my God, like I thought I was exhausted yesterday. This is nuts. Like not only am I mentally and physically exhausted now, the pace at which we did that, but I got to tell you something, Jeff, like it's not what I expected. Like I thought it was going to be a lot more fun. Like this is not fun at all. This is not like filmmaking." Anyways, by day 3, this is a 4-day trip. By day 3, we go back to the meeting, to the market on Wednesday. By lunchtime at 1:00, he says to me, I can't take it anymore. I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm done. Not only am I exhausted, but I hate the distribution business. I hate it. I hate the meetings. I hate the people. I hate talking about business. I hate negotiating deals. Everything about it is just not what the film business should be. And I said, this is the film business. This is the business part of the film business. This is it. Welcome to the real world. Welcome to what it's really all about.
You're Morpheus, basically. You just gave him the red pill.
That's it. That's exactly it. So I hate to disappoint you, but this is it. This is where, when guys like you make movies, this is where they get bought and sold and paid for. Anyways, he didn't even make it through the 3rd day, and he went home a day early from Cannes, France. Like, who leaves Cannes? I said, just go walk around the city, enjoy, go to the beach, just enjoy. He said, I can't. I'm so turned off by this whole thing. I just want to get away from it. He probably went to Nice for the day and whatever and flew home. So anyways, it's interesting that's the business side of the business. And this is where filmmakers, like, they're just not interested in it. And I totally understand why. Remember, I came from the business side. So I'm just so comfortable in that. But it is a big turnoff. And if you're an artist and you just want to make movies, it's a bit of a turnoff to have to deal with all the innuendos of doing all these deals and all the details, and it's exhausting, and it's not fun. It is really not fun. And that's why filmmakers, rely on distributors to do that part of the business. But without that part, there wouldn't be a film business. I mean, that's the business part. I always say to young filmmakers, hey, when you go to Universal Studios, so you pull up on Lancashire Boulevard, and everybody's so anxious, and their tongue is hanging out. Let's go to the back lot. Let's see where the movies, the tour, the back lot, and everything like that. I say, do you guys ever stop and look? Like you pass by as you're driving into the parking lot of Universal Studios. There's this big black building on the right.
The Dark Tower.
NBC Universal. I said, do you guys ever wonder what actually why there's that big office tower there? You ever wonder what happens in there? Oh no, we don't pay attention to that. I said, that's the heartbeat of what goes on where you're going to see. That's where all the business decisions are made. That's where all the money is generated. That's all the distribution and the finance and all those guys. I mean, I never make it past there. All my meetings are in that building. I never really get, as a treat, you go on the lot. But that's the business. So anyways, that is just maybe too long a story.
No, but you make a very good point. And look, I've had filmmakers fight me on the concept of being a filmtrepreneur, on the whole concept of my book. Like, I don't want to know about how to create ancillary product lines. I don't want to create a business around my movie. I don't want to do any of that. I just want to be an artist. And I always tell them, I'm like, look, you don't have to do what I'm talking about. It's not for everybody. But if you're an independent filmmaker and you rely 110% on the only way you're going to generate revenue is through a distributor that you don't have a relationship with, that you're just dating, basically, you're not married, you're dating to see if they're going to do right by you. If you don't have something to mitigate the risk in the way things are going, you're foolish. That's just my feeling as an independent filmmaker. If you're a filmmaker who wants to kind of go out and go down the studio path, well, that's a different conversation, a completely different conversation. But as an independent filmmaker trying to sell a movie, you better understand how to make money with your movie. If not, you're not going to survive.
Or at least surround yourself with the people.
Or surround yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to. I know that most filmmakers don't enjoy it and don't want to be part of that. I get that. I totally understand it. And, that actually makes sense. I mean, you can't be, a jack of all trades. You want to specialize in one thing. It's just understanding the landscape. That's all I'm saying. Just so you know what's going on in those conversations in those office towers while you're shooting on your set.
Yeah. I mean, I think everybody, if you live in LA, you should definitely go to AFM once in your life just to walk the halls for a day pass.
But can I warn everybody about that?
Yes.
AFM could be the most depressing thing you ever do in your life as a filmmaker.
It is true.
Yeah, you need to understand what the AFM is, how it works, how it operates. Because if you go there, number one, if you go there without a pass, just trying to navigate to getting into it is a difficult thing. And you're going to get charged $300 for a day pass or whatever they charge, $270, or maybe you get a deal or you can find something. But just getting in is a tricky thing because it's a business. It's a market. It costs them a lot of money to rent the Lowe's Hotel and do all that kind of stuff. So, fair is fair, right? But if you don't know how to walk a market properly, I mean, you can't walk in and say, "Hey guys, I'm a filmmaker and
I got a movie."
They're not going to even talk to you. That's don't waste my time. We're selling movies. Come back tomorrow, or actually,
don't come at all.
They have gatekeepers who their job is to keep guys like you out of their booths, out of their hotel rooms. So it can be super, super depressing if you've done it. Even just standing in the lobby, which they don't even let you do anymore. It used to be the lobby was open to everybody. Now you need a pass to get in there. That can also be depressing because everybody, excuse my expression, is bullshitting each other and saying, "Oh, I just got this deal and I got this deal," but they didn't. Nobody got any deal. I mean, the odd person got a deal, but they're not standing in the lobby talking about it. If they did, they're out at some fancy restaurant celebrating it or sitting in somebody's booth or something. So
I've spoken about the AFM ad nauseum on this podcast, so I'll put links to the AFM episodes that really go deep into how to actually work that market. But I think it is important that they should go to a market. If you're in Europe, absolutely you should go to the Cannes Film Market or MIPCOM or something like that, just to at least walk it so you understand how things are done. Like I brought filmmakers with me to AFM, and they just walk around like it's like Oz. Like they just don't understand. It's like this overwhelming thing.
It's just like I explained to you with MIPCOM. Yeah. By the way, I'm assuming everybody knows AFM stands for American Film Market. I assume you're
I'm assuming they do, but it will be in the show notes. Now, I wanted to also touch upon, and one of the main reasons you reached out to me is you read my book, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, and was talking to me about niche filmmaking and how you build ancillary product lines and all the stuff that I talk about. And it basically, as you turned into a filmmaker, once you left the dark side, once you left the dark side and you came over to be a Jedi, or at least a Padawan, at least, you came over, you started to.
I am your father.
Yeah, exactly. So once you left the distribution side and you came over to be a filmmaker, you brought a lot of that business savvy with you. And you said, well, if I'm going to be a filmmaker, I'm going to be a successful filmmaker. And you had business ingrained in the system that you were going to build for yourself as a career filmmaker, as you call it, someone who's actually making a living being a filmmaker. And in my book, you start talking like, yeah, I do that. I'm like, well, basically you're kind of like the definition of a filmtrepreneur. He's like, you said, absolutely. So I want you to discuss the kind of films you make and specifically the power of the niche, which is something I yell and scream from the top of my platform to understand that you have to understand a niche. You have to understand an audience and how to build product for that audience or tell a story that's going to work with that audience or reach that audience. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. Okay, first of all, if you don't mind, having grown up in Canada and being bilingual for the first part of my life and speaking French, we use the way niche is, we call it niche.
Yeah, I know, but it does. The niches are in the riches are in the niches. Sounds so much better than niche.
Okay,
so it's niche or niche, potato. It's all up to you.
It is a French derivation. It is. Coming from where I come from, that's the word anyways, whatever. Okay, so I have decided as a filmmaker that for two reasons. I'm going to specialize in family feature films. And primarily within that little, like the family market, which is like, I define family now as all audience viewing, meaning any age can watch it and enjoy it. That to me is what a family film is. So, people use different terminology, but it means all audiences can watch it, whether you're, 5 years old or 80 years old. You can watch it with your grandmother and enjoy it. So within that, I primarily focus on sports dramas because I like inspirational sports stories. And within that, I like to do true stories. So
you're like niche of a niche of a niche, or correct. A niche of a niche of a niche.
Correct. Okay. So now there's two reasons I'm a niche of a niche of a niche. One is I very much personally like those kind of stories. Like I love, one of my favorite movies is Rudy, the football movie.
You read my mind. I was about to say Rudy when you started that sentence.
It's just, I consider that one of the best movies, period, if not sports movies for sure, but movies. It's based on a true story. It's got so much heart. It's done so well. The filmmaker captured everything. I really love that movie. Listen, I just like those. I'm a sucker for sports dramas, true stories that are super inspirational about people who just had so much heart and just wanted to fall. They don't even have to win or lose. I don't care about whether they win or not. I love stories that have heart in them. So
like Miracle. Miracle would be one of those films.
Yeah, Miracle, but Miracle's a little bit different than Rudy. I mean,
no. Rudy, I'm bawling at the end of Rudy. I'm like, I'm a mess. I was a mess.
This guy, who doesn't even get a chance to, he gets one play, Yeah. Okay. So anyways, that's the main reason is because I personally like those kind of movies. I love those kind of stories. That's the main reason I do that. The second main reason, very close second reason is I know how to sell them. Like I know there's a market for them. And I believe there always will be a market for them because there's families out there who always want to co-view and sit down as a family and have family viewing night. So I believe that it's a good bet that, and if I didn't believe that, by the way, I wouldn't make those movies because I wouldn't be able to because if I don't sell them, I can't make more. So I think that niche, I'm glad I enjoy that niche because it's also a very marketable niche. And it's still a niche. You still got to find your audience. But, for the most part, you can be pretty sure that families will watch movies together or, they co-view entertainment. Not all the time, obviously, but it's primarily when there's younger kids involved. So that's why I like it. Because when I go to markets and I speak to my customers and stuff like that, they know that I'm going to deliver quality family films. And, there's not always a place for them always, but people generally will continue. As long as human beings and families exist, they will watch movies together. That's my theory. And so far it's been proven true. So I chose that niche to summarize for two reasons. I like that niche. I enjoy those kind of movies and they're marketable. So that works on both levels.
Now, how do you reach the marketplace and how do you sell these films?
Okay, so this is an ever-changing process. The film business. What did you say to the term you used the other day with me? It changes like weekly now almost.
Now it's almost literally daily because of COVID. But it's changing so rapidly. The foundation underneath. I was saying that Rome is burning. I feel that Rome is burning and the walls are going to come crumbling down around the whole industry because there's going to have to be a change because just the same way it was in the music industry. The music industry had MP3 and that burned down the walls. I mean, that burned down Rome in the music industry and it changed now streaming and all that. So I feel that the same thing's happening here. But yes, it's changing rapidly.
Okay. So here's the thing. I try not to, as a person, focus on what was. I tend to focus on what is or what's going to be. Now you got to focus on what was sometimes, historically, so you have a point of reference, but just because something happened before, it doesn't mean it has to happen again the same way or is going to happen in the same way. So all this stuff, I'm telling you, 90% of what I did in my career is not relevant anymore. I mean, it's relevant in that we hope that people are still going to watch TV and movies and, there's going to be entertainment. But even that, I'm going to make a bold statement, and maybe this is too bold. do people even have the attention span to watch movies anymore? Like for us, like going to the theater, like my generation, like that, I love long form viewing. Mm-hmm. But if you look at my kids and the younger generations, they're more used to short form viewing. Like they're looking at like TikTok is, what is that? 15-second clips. I mean, and that's like gigantic, YouTube, like, is all short format. And that's, so it could be that generations going forward are not interested in kind of the formats that we were interested in. Everybody assumes, a movie's a movie. Everybody loves sitting down and watching a movie. And I'm thinking maybe not. Maybe they like 10-minute segments better, episodic stuff or, shorter form stuff, just because it's a different world now with technology. So even I'm questioning even that, which is interesting because I still say, okay, I'm going to make movies, but maybe I'm going to present them episodically as opposed to in one sitting. And so that's one of the things I've started exploring.
Oh, it's much more lucrative if you have a documentary, not documentary series, but a series based on one of your ideas for a film, like a inspirational sports movie, breaking that up into 4 episodes or 5 or 6 episode miniseries. That's more valuable in the marketplace nowadays than a film. I mean, generally speaking, there's still always I think there'll always be a place for features. I think there'll be something like that. But right now, series is like the more content you could purchase as a streaming service is what they want. And people love watching miniseries now or seasonal things that keep coming out every season.
Yeah, people accuse me of something like, because I came from the business side of the film, from film.
The dark side. Yes.
It's not the dark side.
This is your penance. I'm sorry. I have to beat you up a little bit.
It's not the dark side.
I know.
It's the side that generates the revenue to enable, filmmakers to hopefully make their movies. All right.
Correct.
So I don't think it has to be dark. Here's what I get accused of. Mm-hmm. I get accused of being too focused on the monetization of the movie. Like I'm talking about monetizing before I'm even making.
Same here.
I'm saying, like, why would I bother? Like, okay, in my career, I've made 7 movies, and I made one of them as a personal project. It was a personal passion project where it didn't really matter whether I can monetize or not. I wanted to make it because to me that was what I call my legacy film. It was my statement to the world. It was what I wanted. If I had to send a message, it would be that. Mm-hmm. That would be, now it's been the hardest film to sell too. So it's been tricky, but I was happy to make it. It was my most enjoyable movie for sure. Mm-hmm. The other movies, I'm looking at audience and I'm basically saying, okay, what's going to sell? Because I want to make money with them, because I want to be able to make other films afterwards. So, I'm trying to figure out what to make in order to be able to monetize it. And then within that, then I say, okay, there could be 10 choices. Okay, what would I enjoy making? But I don't get hung up on a story necessarily. I get hung up on a marketing plan. And I say, like I just finished making this gymnastics movie, as you know. And I know that gymnastics is big in an Olympic year. I mean, I've made 2 of them. And I know that there's a big audience for it, and a lot of young girls do gymnastics. So I know that there's a market there for it. And I probably wouldn't necessarily, I'm not in love with the idea of making a gymnastics movie unless there's a market for it. So it was a fun movie to make. I enjoyed making it, and I would definitely do other gymnastics movies. But if I discovered that they weren't going to sell, not sure I would do that. Then I might want to make a football movie where I think it could sell, or a baseball movie or something like that.
And there's not a lot of gymnastic movies as a general statement. It's not like there's 1,000. There's not a lot of competition for that sub niche.
Not as much as as
football.
Other football or baseball, but there's also because there's more fan base, obviously. So it's kind of supply and demand. But but I don't say, hey, like I'm a gymnast and I need to make gymnastics movies. I say, like, there's a market for it. I found a story I like to do. I think it would be, very suitable for that audience and attractive. And that's a big component of it. And let's make the best movie we can and have fun doing it.
So then one thing that I found really interesting, you showed me an example of it, is that you did exactly what I talked about in the book, which is how to leverage the niche in marketing. So you have obviously a gymnastics film. So you also have a relationship with U.S. Gymnastics, right?
USA Gymnastics.
Yeah, USA.
Well,
yeah.
Relationship is these days that's tricky. I mean, USA Gymnastics is a bit of a mess, a disaster.
Right, but you had a couple before this, but you had you were able to tap into that audience, if you will.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, not only through USA Gymnastics, but through various gymnastics. There's lots of gymnastics organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's magazines, there's there's all kinds of groups and state by state and competitions and stuff like that. So there's lots of ways to tap into, say, that marketplace. Like we're dealing. Let's talk about that. Okay, so gymnastics is a bit of a niche sport relative to other sports. It's a lot of people do it, but not obviously as many as do, say, baseball or say soccer. Soccer's for both sexes. So you can find your ways to market that. And I mean, Alex, I think I told you this. I mean, people look at me and they say, "Oh, you've made 7 features and you know what you're doing and you have fun and everything like that." I say, "Yeah, but that's not my day job. My day job is marketing these movies. 90% of what I do is marketing, like finance and marketing these movies. That's what it is. Making them is the holiday, is the fun part. And I really enjoy that. Marketing is everything. I spend lots and lots of time, and that's the job. That's my job is figuring out how to market and sell the movies. So yes, I definitely look for all the niches, and we could spend hours on this. I mean, I showed you a couple of things. I mean, I didn't really get into the weeds on all the stuff that I do, but I mean, this would become a class in marketing, not in filmmaking.
Sure, of course. And that's another discipline that you really do need to understand is branding and marketing as a filmmaker. I mean, even for yourself, you should understand how to brand yourself as a filmmaker. Would you agree?
I would say so, but like I look at it differently. Like I say, I'm trying to figure out before I make the movie what I'm going to do. Like I do the marketing plan before I do the production plan. Like I want to make sure that what I'm going to make. Listen, I believe studios do that too. I've never worked at a big studio, but I do believe that they all sit down like years before they actually go into production and figure out like who's it for, how they're going to market it, what's the look going to be like, and what characters they need and this kind of thing in order to successfully market the movies, and and how's that going to look, what that plan is going to look like, because that makes for good business.
Now, you sell to Netflix a lot as well with your films, correct?
I tend to try to sell to Netflix. Yeah. But
so, what's your experience like with Netflix? So
Netflix my experience is really good. I mean, it's interesting, right? Like they're the big player in the industry. They control a lot of the eyeballs, as you know, and it's a great place, to connect with audiences because they have such a big audience. So I deal on the licensing side with Netflix, i.e. I'm a third, like an independent filmmaker who sells them a finished film, as opposed to most of what they do now is Netflix branded product where they make it themselves. And they'll hire, third party companies like me to sometimes do service production to make their movies, which is a whole other business plan, but they own it. So my movies I own, and I license them to Netflix if they like the movie. So I got to say, dealing with Netflix is, and I'm not saying this because, I think some Netflix executive is going to be listening to this. It's the truth. They have the ability to totally screw filmmakers because it's Netflix and they get offered every single movie that's ever made on the planet. Like, what filmmaker is not going to offer their movie to Netflix, right? Like that's dream come true. So they're in the position to basically just dictate any terms they want, and it's like take it or leave it type of thing. But I got to say they are super fair. They have given me very fair deals, and their contract, it's funny, when I first got their distribution contract, and I read my own contracts because I have legal background and everything. I read it and I'm thinking, oh, this is just going to be a complete joke and it's going to be so lopsided. It wasn't. It was actually a very fair deal. And when I spoke to the lawyer on the Netflix side, she said to me, is there anything you'd like to, talk about or negotiate? And I said, is that even on the table? Like, is it even up for you're Netflix and I'm some like small indie producer? Like, why? And she said, well, it's kind of not really because we think our contract's already fair. But, if you do have some comments, we'd be willing to hear them. And you know what? It's a super fair deal. Like, you want to talk about, like, not like these distribution deals you've seen. Like, it is a very, very fair deal that Netflix puts on the table for filmmakers, because I believe that Netflix totally understands that they need to keep filmmakers in business in order to keep getting good content. Like, I believe they're very supportive of the creative process so that they can support filmmakers so that they can continue to have a good stream of very good product. I think that's their philosophy. And I can tell you from literally like doing business directly with them and getting their contracts and dealing with them, it is not at all like we talked about with the distribution landscape. It's actually a breath of fresh air. Now, obviously, getting to them and having them express interest in your product, and you're going to stand in a very long line behind lots and lots of filmmakers. But once you get there, it's very pleasurable and fair, extremely fair.
Now, that's a good example. So you have a direct relationship with them. So you've obviously built those relationships over a term. So you don't use aggregators. Do you actually use aggregators for other elements of your distribution model?
The only aggregator I use is for Apple TV right now, and I'm about to probably not do that anymore. And that's because Apple TV forces you to do that until you have to have a certain number of films. So you have to have, I think the number is 4 or 5 theatrical films, and I'm just getting there. So I'm hopefully going to qualify in my next movie, and then I can go direct. So there's criteria. Listen, these companies don't want to deal with hundreds or thousands of filmmakers. That's why they have aggregators. I understand that. Mm-hmm. I think that they can get way more of my marketing dollars, and we can work directly and do much better by allowing me to work together, because I just don't like the dilution of going through a third party. But I understand why it exists in terms of supporting and managing lots of different vendors. But yeah, for the most part, that's the only aggregator I use. Everything else is direct. Like you can direct on Amazon Prime, like not the SVOD side, but the transactional side.
And do you have any of your films up on AVOD or not yet?
I'm toying with it. I'm toying with YouTube now. The YouTube model, has been super disruptive and changed everything. I've definitely explored Tubi and Pluto and all the big AVOD platforms. I've sat in all their presentations. I know exactly how they work. I understand it. And so I'm definitely looking at it. I don't know how much money can be made. You see, this is one of those things where you really got to do the math, and you got to do lots of extrapolation, because even with a lot of volume on that's a volume game, obviously, the AVOD. You got to be doing, showing on YouTube, and these are volume distribution models. So even one sort of crappy TV deal that seems like, a low ball offer could be more than a big volume deal on an AVOD platform. But it's changing. So I'm very open-minded, and I'm looking at everything, and I'm paying close attention, because these models are changing. The way people are consuming product changes every day, and you can't say, oh, that's how they all did it, so they're going to do it that way. Kids, listen, the younger generation, kids generation, they don't believe they have to pay for anything. They grew up thinking everything's free. All these apps are free and all these things, and it's terrible for songwriters and filmmakers and everything who don't, people don't appreciate how much goes into that, how much time and effort and labor, and then people want to consume it for free. My generation, we never thought about that. We were happy to pay for stuff. You were happy to pay for an album or CD or something like that, or a movie. The new generation, they don't want to pay for anything. So, it's kind of come full circle, where with the AVODs, it's kind of like broadcast TV again.
You're back to TV, yeah.
But you got to watch the commercials, So yeah. I am paying attention.
It's just changing so rapidly. It's just changing so rapidly. And God knows, we'll all be on a holodeck in 20 years. Who knows?
It's possible. It's possible. Alex, there's one thing in your book that I wanted to, it's not necessarily about distribution, but there's one thing that, and we haven't talked about this, but I do want to say, this is also math. This is a mathematical equation. So I get the fact that making an independent film is like a crazy, crazy difficult process and super financially risky. I totally get it, right? But I learned something in my business affairs, early on. primarily through the legal department, like through my law training, that if you're going to spend your time and effort and like making a movie, I mean, you're going to spend, I did the calculation. I mean, if you do it the way you did, Alex, where you were, cinematographer, director, editor, you put, your heart and soul into it.
Yeah.
I did some math on it. I'm going to say that you spent somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 hours on that movie. And it could be even more in your case.
Yeah. You mean my first film, my very first film? Yeah. That's
a feature. I'm talking a feature. No, sorry, not a short.
No. My first feature. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty fair statement. I mean, it depends on, it could be a little less, could be a little bit more. Who knows? I mean, if you're including crowdfunding, you're including the marketing, you're including, yeah.
I'm including everything. I'm including from the idea of saying, okay, I'm going to make a movie to actually getting it finished. Mm-hmm. I mean, here's how the math works. I think it's about 9 months. It's kind of like having a baby, 9-10 months, 4 weeks per month, 6 days per week, 10 hours per day. That's 2,160 hours. Sorry, I already did the math on it.
Sure.
Now here's what I wanted to say to you. So you say I'm going to make a $5,000 or $10,000 feature film so that I don't take too much financial risk. Mm-hmm. And let's say you make the $5,000 feature film, and you put in 2,160 hours.
It doesn't make sense. The ROI is not there, or the ROT is not there.
There's no ROT there because for the same. So let's do the math. Let's say you make, and you get really lucky, and you make 4 times your budget back. Let's say you make $25,000 on a $5,000 film. Mm-hmm. So that's a success. You've made 5 times your budget.
Sure.
So that's a success. I mean, what filmmakers are going to say, hey, I just made $20,000 on a film that cost me 25, so I netted $20,000. That's a lot. But when you realize that you put in 2,200 hours to make $20,000, it's mm-hmm. not good math.
Well, you are making an assumption. So on my second film, I did that. I shot the film in 36 hours. I only shot in 4 days. So it was 4 days. We did about 36 hours of actual production time. But let's say we did the full 40 hours, 45 hours, whatever it is. And then, all in all, when that movie was done on the corner of Ego and Desire, I might have spent a few hundred hours on it. And for me, let's say even if I spent 500 hours on it, which I don't think I did, there's the assumption of 2,100 hours or 2,500 hours. That's on a $5,000 film. If you're spending 9 months to make a $5,000 film, you have not done a good job. That does not make sense. When you're making a film of that budget range of $3,000 to $15,000, you should be in and out within a couple months. And in all honesty, shoot it 2-3 months tops, and then you're into the marketing phase of it. But I still generated a good amount of money off of my first film and off of my second film. And it made sense for me because I also was building it was part of my entire ecosystem of what I do. So I wasn't just making money on my film. I was making money from ancillary products and other things like that. So the book that you purchased, the book that you purchased, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, has multiple mentions, if not a full chapter, a case study on the corner of Ego and Desire. I was already selling the book before the movie was even released, making money off of that. So my mindset's a little bit different than yours. And I know you're always like, you shouldn't make a movie for less than $700,000 or $500,000, $700,000, $900,000. But you're coming from that point of view. I'm coming from a different point of view where I'm building an entire ecosystem. I'm building out a lot of other revenue streams. I'm not only making money from the exploitation of the film itself. I'm making it from the entire filmtrepreneurial ecosystem. And that's why that makes sense for me. And that's what I try to teach in the book, is for filmmakers to make that ecosystem. So if you do make a $5,000 or $10,000 movie, even if you make 4 times your money on the movie, it's nothing compared to the $50,000 or $60,000 you made selling all these other ancillary product lines and other services and other things like that. And I made the argument in the very first movie I made, which was an $8,000 short film back in 2005, that I generated over $1 million with that project. And the reason I did that is because that film launched my post-production company. And every year it put food on my table for the next 10 to 12 years. And I was making money in and day and out. And I had filmmakers coming in all the time from that film. So it's not only about, in addition to that, I also made $100,000 on the short as selling the actual short. And I still make money off that short to this day. So it's all about frame of mind and how you're looking at it. I understand your point of view, and with your math, you're absolutely right. But from my point of view with my math, it makes sense for me. Is that clear? That fair?
You know what? You're right. The thing that, you can't be spending more than 2 or 3 months if you're making a low budget film.
Absolutely.
Your return on time is not going to be valuable. So yeah, my business model is different. I like to, shoot in the $1 million range, and, if I haven't made at least 100,000 or more, then I feel like it's not worthwhile because of all the time, effort, and money I put into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And your business model makes sense for you because you're also, like, every filmmaker has a very unique set of skills. We're all little Liam Neesons from Taken. We all have little sets of specific skills that we bring, and you have a plethora of knowledge and tools from the distribution side. So you're very clear on how you're going to be able to make that money. So you can play at the $700,000, $900,000 budget range because you also understand niche films and being able to sell it and marketing. You understand all that stuff. So at that budget range, you need to be you have to be an assassin. You have to be a ninja at that budget range to be able to crack off $100,000, $200,000 profit on a film like that, and hopefully much more than that. But you have to be really strategic about it. Where filmmakers who are starting off at a $15,000 budget film, they don't need to be as strategic. And that's why I always say you start small and you build from there, because you got to kind of learn the craft and learn the business side as well. So that's just, again, it's just two different point of views, but both are correct in their own way. Because if I try to shoehorn my situation into yours, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, and vice versa. So it's all about perspective.
Yeah. I guess, the difference is that you just said, don't spend more than 2 or 3 months. I'm saying spend, 9 to 10 months and make it like put your heart and soul into it. But it's a different time investment. It's a different time investment. It's also a different investment. So you're talking about, let's say 9 or 10 months on a movie, and you generate $100,000 off that film. Well, that's a really decent yearly salary, depending on where you live in the world. Correct. And that makes sense. But if you make a $5,000 movie, a $500,000 movie and break even or lose money, and you spent a year, that's not you can't survive. So I understand. It's all relative. Now, I could talk to you for at least another 2 hours, but but I want to ask you a few questions I ask all my guests. What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today? Again, I'm gonna go back to what I said earlier about what's your intention. If your intention is artistic and you just want to be on the art side, I would suggest choose one project that you're really, really passionate about. And if you want to make it independently, go to your circle of people and be honest with them and say, this is something that I really want to do. I believe that it will, resonate and hopefully find an audience. But if it doesn't, consider this helping me achieve my personal goal, and keep it very low budget so that you don't blow anybody's brains out, financially, and don't take anybody's money that you can't afford to lose it. So don't put anybody in a financially uncomfortable position. But if you want to be a career filmmaker, then you got to really educate yourself on the business side, or go try to go down the studio route, or the streaming route where you're working for somebody else. You're not really an independent filmmaker anymore. If you're really, really passionate about the industry, but as you know, Alex, those jobs are far and few between. It's an anomaly to get one of those jobs, and you're basically gonna kill yourself for the first 5 to 10 years and not really do what you want to do, in the hopes that you ultimately will do it, and you might not do it. So I like the whole Filmtrepreneur thing. I'm an entrepreneur, and the good news about that is you get to call the shots and do what you want to do. Bad news is there's a little bit more risk involved, obviously. But if you're really passionate, then, like I say, either make your passion project and be happy that you got something done and you left the world your mark, and don't worry about the financial side. But if you're going to worry about the financial side, then get educated. Like really get involved.
Would you agree, though, that I find it's riskier to take that job in the studio and only rely on those kind of jobs because you have given the power of your livelihood to somebody else, to another company, where I rather have a little bit more risk and control my own destiny in a sense. Is that fair? I know you, but I both have the same kind of mentality when it comes to that because we're both entrepreneurs.
They're different risks, like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like losing a job is a huge problem in one's life when you're dependent on a salary and you lose your job. But as an entrepreneur, when you lose your job, you also lose your investment with it.
Correct.
So you're losing two things. You're losing your livelihood and you're losing the investment that you put into making a livelihood. That's why in some ways it's a little riskier as an entrepreneur. But, more
upside.
There's way more risk and return, obviously.
Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
The most important lesson I learned, and it probably took 15 to 20 years. And the single most important thing is that, like I said before, it's just about trust. Like really life is about relationships. Probably the biggest relationship you're going to have is, with your spouse, if you're going to get married or have children, that type of thing. But business is all about relationships, and you want to be in business with people who you trust. And so learning two things. One, how to choose somebody you trust is important. And then learning how to actually trust them. And people earn trust. Trust is not something you talk about and then you give it. It's got to be earned both ways. You got to earn somebody's trust and they got to earn your trust. And trust is such a powerful tool if and when you have it. And if you don't have it, there's what people call this gut thing. A filmmaker called me last week and he said, there's just doing this distribution deal, but there's just something wrong with it. And I could tell you what's wrong with it before you even tell me the deal. You don't trust the people on the other side. You feel like you're going to get screwed. This is just a trust thing. That's why it's bothering you. We can talk about all the terms of the deal and everything like that, but you don't trust that they're going to keep the terms anyways. So I guess the lesson is life's too short. Don't get into bed with people you don't trust. Sometimes you have to, you're forced into it, but know who they are and only give so much trust and try to find those people who you really trust. And
now, what is the biggest fear you had to overcome when you made your first film?
You said something, I can't remember if it was on your book or one of your podcasts or something like that, and you've probably said it many times. And this is also something I learned and has become a super fear of mine. It's not a fear, but you know that it's way, way, way more taxing on life to lose somebody else's money than it is to lose your own. Mm-hmm. That is a fear, losing other people's money. I take it so seriously that when my investors, because my investors, remember, are not investing in a movie. They're investing in my ability to make and sell a movie because they don't know anything about the movie. My investors, I have a nice group of investors. They're primarily real estate guys. And so they don't know anything about the movie business, but they invest in they trust that I know what I'm doing. And that's why now when somebody gives you money based on trust, which I've done to them also on the real estate side, you don't want to lose it. They've trusted you. You lose your own money, you feel bad. But you can still sleep at night. You just feel bad. Sometimes, it has an impact. You lose their money, you feel terrible. You feel like you've betrayed their trust.
Right.
So that's probably my greatest fear is losing my investors' money more so than lose. Now, listen, my wife might argue with that. She might can't you put us we're an investor also? And I say, yeah, but we're a different kind of investor. I'm the lead guy, and everybody's banking on my ability. So there's a lot of pressure when you take other people's money, and that's why you got to be straight up front with people, and you got to say there's gigantic risk involved. You're going to do your best. Here's the plan. But every other business investment, it might not pan out, and don't invest if you can't afford to lose it.
And 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Definitely Rudy is one of them, for sure, because I love the heart in that movie. Like I said, I primarily like sports dramas, so most of them. Rudy would be up there. like I was a big fan of the original Star Wars movies, just how creative they were at the time and how innovative. And I love the fact that Lucas had to work the streets for years and years and years. Like what makes the original Star Wars movies so attractive to me is just how persistent and like motivated Lucas was in just believing in himself and so passionate. And there's a good chance those films would have never gotten made if not for his persistence and passion. And like, I've never met the guy, and I don't know for sure, what's real and what isn't. Just I've read, a lot of his materials and listened to him on stuff. And so the films were great at the time. I love watching them now because they're not so great anymore. I mean, it's just some of this stuff is so dated. But at the time, it was so, like, I remember going to that first Star Wars movie, lining up at the theater, and it was magic. It was total magic. So I would put those up there too. There's so many other movies that move me. I can't necessarily, it's funny. I should have been prepared for that question, but no, I can't really say other than Rudy definitely is top shelf for me.
And one of my favorite parts of the whole Star Wars story is the whole the deal, how he constructed the deal. He's like, yeah, just give me the sequel rights. And I just want merchandising. You guys don't want that, do you?
but he had such belief in himself and the vision, and then that could have maybe not worked out well. But you know what? Like in hindsight, 2020, it worked out really well. But there's probably lots of those kind of deals that didn't work out. Right,
but he was able to build a fairly nice empire off of that. He didn't do bad. Now, where can people find you and watch your films and do the work you're doing?
You can definitely find some of my films on Netflix. Full Out Kiss and Cry, and the new Full Out 2 is coming out soon. And I have a website, obviously, which is my company's called Deverett Media. So it's www.deverettmedia.com. And IMDb, Google, whatever. But, my website's the quickest way. And I'm not one of those guys who hides. Like, if you want to – listen, I don't know how many people are going to call me or whatever afterwards, but I'm always happy to talk to filmmakers.
Careful, Jeff.
Fair enough.
Careful. But don't put your email out there. I'm telling you. Don't put the phone number out there right now. Trust me. I've had other guests do that, and they're just like, Alex, I had no idea.
Alex, here's the thing. I genuinely like to help other filmmakers navigate this process. I don't want to be inundated with millions and millions of calls and projects and everything like that. But I look at, and I told you this, I'm thinking of doing this sort of mentoring course where, and I don't want to go out to hundreds, and thousands of filmmakers. I want to go out to a dozen or so every year and just really hold their hand and mentor them through this process if they really want to try to navigate it. And I think that would be fun and exciting, and very fulfilling to do that, to be able to kind of help them. Listen, everybody, you learn when you fall and you get back up, but it's sometimes better if you don't have to. If I can show you where the bump in the road is going to be before you have to go over it and fall, it would be. Will you learn as much? No, but at least you'll get past it and get down that road a little quicker.
Fair enough. Jeff, it has been an epic conversation, as I knew it would be. I am so grateful to you that you came on and have been so candid about everything from the other time in your life. We won't call it dark side, the other time in your life. But I hope it helps filmmakers get a better understanding of the other side of the table, which is something that I can talk all I want about the other side of the table, but to talk to someone who's been on the other side of the table and go, this is what they're thinking, was, I think, invaluable. So thank you so much for being on the show and dropping the knowledge bombs on the tribe, man. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And good luck with all your stuff.
Did I tell you or did I tell you? This was an insane episode. I cannot thank Jeff enough for coming on the show, being so transparent, so raw about the process, and really, really just dropping some insane mega atomic knowledge bombs on the tribe today. Thank you again, Jeff, so much. If you want to get links to anything we spoke about in this episode, head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/396. And again, if you want to become part of the beta launch team for Film Distribution Confidential, the course that predatory film distributors do not want you to take, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/let me in. Thank you guys so much. I really do hope that this episode has opened your minds, has really planted some seeds, and made you think differently about how you can make money with your film, how should you approach it, how you need to understand the business, or at least partner with someone who understands the business. But you as a filmmaker needs to understand the basics. Just like you need to understand the basics of camera, the basics of acting, the basics of art department, the basics of sound, just the basics of every part of the filmmaking process. Film distribution is a huge part. If not, it's probably about 50% of the entire filmmaking process. Like we said in the interview, the first half is the fun part, making the movie. The second half can be the fun part, but you also need to have knowledge about that process, because without the second part, you will not be able to make another first part. Without understanding the business, you will not be able to do the show. As IFH Academy instructor Suzanne Lyons says, there's the word show and there's the word business. And the word business has twice as many letters as the word show. Take that to heart, my friends. Take that to heart. Thank you for listening, guys. Please share this episode with as many filmmakers as you can. This information needs to get out to as many filmmakers as possible. Thanks again for listening, guys. As always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.